So we're looking at certain proofs that deal with the subject matter of the 2520, and we went through statement from early writings, page 229. We went to William Miller's Apology and Defence, and we went through Spalding and McGann, page 1. And I think, as far as I can, for myself, I think we've given a robust defence about the 2520, its truthfulness, and it really should address all the questions that anybody ever has about the issue. But we're still going to press on, and we're going to deal with the Great Controversy statement. But before we do that, just want to read two statements. The first one is 13MR. Page 359. The second one is 5MR. Page 202. By the way, I think it's always useful to know when things are being done. Spalding and McGann, the date that I have for that is October the 23rd, and I'm not making a point about the month or the date, but it's in the year 1850. And we know that this chart was produced in 1850. If you actually look at it, it says published by O. Nichols, Dorchester, Massachusetts. And if you look at this one, it's the same place. This vision that Ellen White says that she saw 3 times was Dorchester, Massachusetts. She's given the vision in the same place that the chart is produced in the same year. So we're going to read 13MR, then 5MR. 13MR. I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart by Brother Nichols. So this is the chart we're dealing with. Otis Nichols produces the chart in 1850. Now White's commenting that God was in the publishment of this chart. So, I mean, I don't know how many times we can just go through this and ignore what Ellen White's talking about. We've already said it's a singular vision. We've identified and proven that the singular vision is the 2520 that's on this chart. It's one vision only, and it's the truth. And then she says that God was in the publishment of this chart. One thing I didn't mention, this chart here was produced in the year 1842, and it served its purpose going all the way through into April 1844. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't use this chart for other purposes, but effectively the use of the chart was invalidated, because by the time you come to April 1844, so that we're clear on this is 1843 and this is 1844. It's not January to January, it's April to April. So by the time you get to April 1844, the information on this chart is no longer accurate, because they already know it's not 1843. They know it's going to be 1844. So the chart itself essentially loses its effectiveness. And they go through the Midnight Cry movement. You get to October 44, then you get to, that's the Great Disappointment. And after that, the church is going to begin to try to consolidate. This is the few believers. Is there a question?
Well, I'm just trying to open up manuscript releases, but...
Oh, is it struggling?
Yeah, I was going to...
Yeah, just ask.
Yeah.
It's not actually a year later, is it? It's
What isn't?
1843.
6 months or something.
April.
Yeah,
To
April.
1844 April.
It's only 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did I say? Did I say it? Yeah.
Oh no, I just double checked.
Okay, yeah. Because there's October, there's December, and that's going to be April 45, and that's when that year would end. So after October 1844, the few surviving believers are going to be scrambling to get their lives back in order, and they're going to begin to try and organise. And one of the key figures in this history is Joseph Bates. Joseph Bates becomes an anchor in this history, and he starts interacting with the whites. I shouldn't say the whites because it's not the whites, it's James White and Sister Harmon, Evelyn Harmon. He has a vision not long afterwards, and he ends up sort of being like her escort, for want of a better word, her protector. People begin to start questioning that kind of behaviour in Victorian America. And
she always had a sister with her.
Sorry?
She always had a sister or a chaperone.
Yes, but it's still, people start to question what's going on, and they begin to fall in love with each other anyway. And they eventually get married. And in the meantime, they're interacting with Joseph Bates. Joseph Bates is trying to persuade them, and I guess maybe it's not the right way to say it, but they're trying to persuade Joseph Bates that she's a prophet, and he wants to persuade them about the Sabbath. So by the time you get to the year 1846, they're already married, and now they're keeping the Sabbath. And Ellen White gets rebaptized. You have 3 events in 46. And from 46 onwards, essentially they're going to go back and double check what went wrong, just to sort out everything, and to, I guess what you might kind of say is like formalise the message really. You want to go back and make sure everything's correct and sort of all sorted out. And so they're going to spend the next few years doing that. They're going to go through this chart and with a fine-tooth comb make sure everything's okay on this chart, and if there isn't, they're going to make some adjustments. And the end result of all of that is the 1850 chart. So the end result of all of this is the 1850 chart. And over this time period, they've developed their understanding of the Sabbath, they've refined their understanding of the sanctuary. All of that has been straightened out, and they put that information on the chart. So here Ellen White's saying, I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart. When they're doing this study over these few years, there are many walls that they hit, there's many barricades. They're reading the scriptures and they don't understand what's going on. They can't understand scripture, just like in the same way you and I can't. There's many Bible passages we just don't understand. And there's something going on with Ellen White. She's still a young woman, but she's just a normal Christian. But the Lord's blocked her mind. So when they go into these regular Bible studies, she's not able to participate in the Bible studies in any kind of meaningful way. So she just sits there as a kind of a passive participant and just sees what's going on and can't really give any input into this. And every time they come to this point where there's an impasse and they can't get through, she ends up going into vision and she ends up sorting their problem out. So, one thing that we just do not want to admit is all the fundamental truths of Adventism that were reconfirmed in this history, we got through direct revelation. It wasn't just through hard study on the Bible, but we pretend that it was. So all she would do was, she'd go into vision, explain what the verses mean, and it would click, just, I think, like it has with yourselves. There are Bible passages that you've read before, and you've not understood them, and someone stood up and said, well, it means this, and you say, oh, I can see it now. It's the same thing, but this was through the spirit of prophecy. So you've got to 1850 now, and they've produced this chart. We read in Spalding them again. I'll just quickly review what she said. She says, I saw the truth should be made plain on tables. That means she's received some instruction that they should make this truth plain upon tables. Obviously, this is dealing with this chart because it's already been made plain upon a table already. So she's dealing with this chart. She's been shown it should be done. She's saying we shouldn't withhold means to make sure this happens. We should be generous in our support for the production of this chart and its distribution. She mentions about the old chart, It shouldn't be changed except by inspiration. So nobody can go into this chart and start changing things in the way that they want to. They've already done all of this work already, and they're about ready to make this chart. Then she says everything that on this chart was as God wanted it to be, and He hid the mistake that was on there. So we've read all of that, and now she says, I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart by Brother Nichols. So this chart, God was involved in its production. So you really have to ask yourself the question, if He was in the production of this chart, why does, and this is a singular vision, why does the singular vision contain the 2520? Why would it do that if the Lord was in the publishment of this chart? And people come up with some really silly arguments like 677 is in small font. It becomes really crazy, some of the arguments people have.
Having small font on it is irrelevant.
It's
The cross is very small compared to the first chart.
Yes, obviously that's not important.
I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart by Brother Nichols. I saw that there was a prophecy of this chart in the Bible. And the prophecy of this chart we read, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2, talks about tables in the plural, singular vision. And if this chart is designed for God's people, if it is sufficient for one, it is for another. And if one needed a new chart painted on the larger scale, all would need it just as much. So now she's attacking. She's on the attack because people have started into the chart making business. And she says, if you want to produce a chart, this new chart on a big scale, and you think it's directed from the hand of the Lord, everybody should have this new chart. But obviously it's a rhetorical statement because it's not really what she's meaning at all. Drop down to Manuscript Release Volume 5, page 202. This was in 1850. I haven't checked what the date for the 13 MR is, but 5 is 1850 the same. It says, God showed me the necessity of getting out a chart. I saw it was needed, and that the truth made plain upon tables would affect much and would cause souls to come to the knowledge of the truth. So once you produce this second chart, it's going to have a powerful effect upon God's people, and it says it's going to cause souls to come to the knowledge of the truth. That's what this chart is going to do, and we agree with that. That's why she says invest your means in the production of this chart so it can get out to God's people, and we would recommend people do that. This chart is critical for people to understand. We put this chart with it because when you put the two charts together, they explain one another. But this chart, there aren't any mistakes in it. God was in the publishment of it. It corrects all the issues here, and it's repeating all the same information. And it's the vision, which is the 2520. On our return to Brother Nichols, the Lord gave me a vision and showed me that the truth must be made plain upon tables. What was that vision? It must be the vision that we just read in Spalding and McGann. And would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message, with the two former being made plain upon tables. So what does that mean?
Could you put the Spalding and McGann quote?
The quote?
Yeah, the reference.
Yeah, Spalding and McGann, page 1, paragraph 3. I'm going to read this again. This is referring to a Spalding and McGann quote. He says, on our return to Brother Nichols, she's gone back to his house, the Lord gave me a vision. And she had this vision in Dorchester, Massachusetts. We've already said that. So she's gone back to visit him, and that's where she's going to have the vision. And this is what the vision is. And showed me that the truth must be made plain upon tables, plurals. They've already got one, they're going to make a second one. And it would cause many to decide for the truth. So if you have this chart, what is it going to give you the ability to do? Make a decision for the truth. And what is the truth that she's talking about? It says, make the truth plain on tables. But Habakkuk says what? Make the vision plain upon tables. So when she says the truth here, show me that the truth must be made plain upon tables. What is the truth? It's the vision. And we've proven what the vision is from the early writings, 229, paragraph 1 quote. It's this chain of truth And how many commencement dates have you got for the vision?
Just one.
Just one, because everything else is just a link. And he was given the commencement and the links. So we're all up to speed on that, yeah?
Yeah.
So she's saying now, and it would cause many to decide for the truth, by the third angel's message, with the two former being made plain upon tables. So she says the third angel's message. Are we all at the same place? Are you there?
I'm sorry, I just was wondering what early writing was. It early writing?
229.
229. Okay. I missed it.
So she says, by the third angel's message, with the former two. So if you've got the third angel's message, what are the former two that she's referring to? It must be the first and second. She says, we're on the third and the former two. It must be the two that came before it. So she's referring back to number 1 and number 2. So let's get this point so that we're clear about this. If you've got it on your phones, it says, and it would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message, with the two former messages being made plain upon tables. So let's see what did she say originally? She said the truth, where? Plain on tables.
What are you reading from, Parminder? 5MR?
So she said the truth must be made plain upon tables. Where did she say that? Spalding them again. Habakkuk 2, verse 2 says what? The vision
Must be made
plain upon tables. Now she's changed her language again. And now what she said? She says the former two being made plain on.
Table.
So the plain on tables. So can we see what we're doing? We're doing line upon line. And now look what we've got. We've got the truth. We've got the vision. And we've got what? The two former. What are the two former? This is the first and the second angel's messages. So, even if you don't understand what we're doing, let's carry on. What did we say the vision was?
The truth.
Vision.
With the truth, but let's be clear about this. This is the vision.
Yes.
There's only one vision on this chart.
Yeah.
Only one. And what is that vision?
The chain of truth.
All the
Right.
prophecies.
But what is it?
All the links.
That one to that one.
Oh yes.
What's the name of it?
24.
2520. So if that's the 2520, she's saying this. We're going to take this out here, the vision. That's the 2520.
Yeah.
Then she says it's the truth. So the truth must be the 2520. And she says the former two are made plain on tables. But this is the 2520 on the table. So what is the 2520?
First and second angels.
The first and the second angel's messages. That's the 2520. But what is the first and second angel's messages? Don't answer yet. Let's do a bit of revision. We're at high school and we're doing our essay. When you do an essay, you break it down into 3 parts. You do an intro, you do the body, and you do the binding off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the conclusion. And the conclusion, you say what you're going to say, you say it, and you do what?
Say what you said.
You say what you said. So the conclusion is the repeat of 1 and 2. So if that's the case, 1 and 2 is 3. So you know that the 2520 is what?
The third angel's.
Third angel's message.
Wow. So amazing.
So what you've got on this chart and on this chart, this vision is a message. And what is the message? It's the everlasting gospel. Because if 1 and 2 is 3,
Yeah.
you know that this is the everlasting gospel. The everlasting gospel. So the 2520 is the everlasting gospel.
Yes.
Now if that's not something to get excited about or something to be serious about, what is?
What is?
I must have missed that.
I didn't realise that the 2520 was the first and second angel's message.
No, so
I don't know how that is. I
just
must
went through
have. I must have. Oh, really?
He just said,
There was no pre-knowledge on this.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go again. We're in Spalding and McGann.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I was shown in vision to do what? Get the truth and put it onto tables. Spalding and McGann.
Okay.
Habakkuk chapter 2 says, I'm asking you.
The truth is,
No.
no, vision was made plain
Vision.
on table. Mm.
It says, put the vision on tables.
Mhm.
So we're going to do line upon line, and when you do line upon line, you get a thought, a concept, a word, and you find it in two different places. It's the same word, and those two verses are saying the same thing.
Mm.
You understand that?
Mhm.
So what's the same? The tables. So if that's the same, this must be the same.
Yeah.
So truth equals vision.
Yeah.
You okay with that? Now we're in 5MR 202 and 203. We're here. She says this. On our return to Brother Nichols, the Lord gave me a vision. That vision is what we read in Spalding and McGann. All this information that we've just got here. What she's going to do is she's going to say the same thing but use different language. And it would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message. So, do you understand? Do I need to explain what I'm reading, or does it make sense?
So she just said about by the third angel's message.
So I'm going to say that. What does that mean?
So
I'll read it to you. Explain what it means, or I'll explain it for you. Either way, I don't mind. And it would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message. What does that mean?
well, that means that if she's saying that it's the third angel's message, then it must be the first and second as well.
We haven't read first and second yet. We haven't got to that part of the statement. I'm just asking, what does it mean when it says, and it would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message? I'll tell you what I think it means. She says, it. So the it is the table that she wants published. It's this one here. That's the it that she's talking about. And the 1850 chart would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message. So it's by the third angel's message that this chart is going to cause many people to come to the truth. Then she makes a break. She says, with the two former being made plain upon tables. So what does it mean with the two former?
Okay, that's the first and second.
So it must be the first and second. But be careful, because she said here, in this statement here, 5MR, let me read it again. On our return to Brother Nichols, the Lord gave me a vision and showed me that the truth must be made plain upon tables. As she's writing this, has this chart been produced?
No.
It hasn't been produced, so mark that. Then she says, with the former two, what were the former two? First and second message. But then she says, being made plain upon tables. How many tables are there when this is being written? Only one. So she's quoting the plain upon tables. It's not that she's telling you there are two tables. She's quoting from where? Habakkuk 2:2. And in Habakkuk 2:2, up to this date, how many charts have been made in agreement with the prophecy? One. So she's not saying there's two tables. She's just saying there's one table. I know that. We need to make a second one. But I'm just going to tell you where all this is referenced from in the scriptures. There's only one table. And what's on that table?
The first and second.
The two former being made plain upon tables. But we said that the truth is on tables, the vision is on tables, and now she's saying the two former is on tables. So now we're saying the truth and the vision equals the first and the second. So if we're okay with that, what was the vision that's being referred to on the chart?
It's the complete.
It's the 2520. So we're happy with that on the logic of that. So all I've done is, if the vision is 2520, the truth equals the vision, so the truth must be the 2520. And she just said the first and second angel's messages are on that chart, made plain. So the first and second angel's messages must be the 2520. It has to be.
Get it.
And then means it's also
Because what is the third angel's message?
first and second.
It's this chart.
Yeah, that's right.
Because this is the chart for the first and second. This is the chart for the first and second angel's message. She said that.
Yes.
Then she says, we need to produce another one so many people can decide for the truth by the third angel's message. So this is the first and second angel's messages. This is the second angel's messages. The third message. If you were here at Sydney, if you're not here, if you were there at Sydney, how many witnesses have you got here?
2.
2 witnesses. So if you weren't there, you might not know what I mean by that. But this is the 2 witnesses.
Yes.
You may have heard that we teach that these are the 2 witnesses, the symbol of the covenant. The reason they're the 2 witnesses is because this is the first and second, and this is the third. I'm not even manipulating numbers or jiggling around. This is just what she just says. All you need to do is work out the implications of all of that. You can do it. So you can just say, well, the third angel's message is the Sabbath, connected with the sanctuary. You can do that if you want to. But she's not talking about that. She's talking about singular vision. The vision is the 2520. 2520 is the third angel's message. The way she's expressing it.
Well, 1 and 2 equals 3.
And because 1 and 2 equals 3. This is the same chart. She says 1 and 2 was on this chart. She says that this is going to make people decide for the third angel's message. So if you've got anybody, maybe I should do some scaremongering now. Don't listen to people. Don't listen to people who preach the third angel's message and they're not standing in front of this chart because they're teaching you a false message.
I agree.
You have to stand before this chart and say, this is the third angel's message, and I'll tell you which bit of it is.
1 and 2
It's
equals 3.
all of it. The
Yeah.
whole thing is the third angel's message. From here to here. Can you see now why the church fights against the 2520?
Yeah.
Because what is the third angel's message? It's 9/11. Brother Patrick showed you that. 9/11 is the third angel's message. What do I mean by that? Because it's Revelation 14 verses 9 to 11. Yeah?
Oh,
Well, if it's right. Revelation 14
yeah.
verses 9 to 11 is the third angel's message. It's in those verses. And what's that message about? Don't receive
Yeah. The mark of
the mark of the beast, which is the thing that all of us are gearing up for as Adventists.
Yeah.
We're all supposed to be getting ready for that event, aren't we? The glorious event. We should be embracing the third angel's message.
Yeah.
Because it's the Sunday law issue. But if the third angel's message is the vision that's on this chart, our church has thrown it away, rejected it. So they're rejecting the issue of the third angel's message, which is the only means for you to be saved at the end of the world, because it's the Sunday Sabbath issue. That's why there's a fight over this. That's why we're required to
Take it out.
do what?
Take it out.
Take it out, yes, to bring it to them.
You really have rejected all 3 angels' messages, really.
Reject one, you reject them all.
That's right, you can't reject. And aside from that, if 1, 2, and 3 are the 2520, really, then they've rejected them all because they've rejected the 2520. They've rejected the truth. They've rejected the vision. They've rejected Ellen White.
Yeah.
We should be scared
Yes.
because we're going to lose our children and our parents and our friends and our brothers and our sisters because they're doing lip service. Remember the blind man's parents? When Jesus healed him and they said, was he really born blind? And they said, yes. They said, who healed him? What the name? And they wouldn't tell the name because they're going to get disfellowship. They mention that name. They say, he can sort out his own mess. He'll tell you who it is. And we're not going to get involved in the controversy because they're going to get disfellowship. My sister.
Would verse 12 be included in the third angel's message also, because it's giving you the other half of the everlasting gospel?
It's not the message itself, but it's dealing with the experience that you have. Just like if you go to Exodus chapter 20 and you pick up verse 8 just says, can I give you a warning to remember? But after he's told you to remember, you go to verses 9, 11, and this is the Sabbath command. So you're given a warning to remember, but the command itself is 9:11. It's the Sabbath command, Exodus chapter 20, and you get the same dynamics in Revelation 14. of course it's connected, but the command itself or the announcement is in verses 9 to 11. You can't disconnect one from that, I agree with that. Just like you can't disconnect A, but this command itself is 9:11. These are not coincidences. There's so many 9:11s in the King James Bible. It's profound. I mean, forget the King James Bible. I mean, because they were holy men who translated that. By the way, if you go on the internet and you get the full preface or introduction to the King James Bible, the reason they produce it, they even understood why they were producing this. They said that this book would give a deadly wound to the papacy, because the papacy had locked up the Bible and refused to allow it to be read in the vernacular, in the common language. And then once that would happen, it would destroy the papacy because they'd lose control over people. And they made that statement. They cut down that preface there in all the new printings of it. Sometimes they don't even have it in there. But that is that issue there about the nature and the purpose of it. And there was one thing I was going to say, which I've forgotten. Anyway.
It's just interesting you raised that parable with the story about the blind man, because Christ says, you know, or it might be John or one of the apostles, you know, he who confesses the name of Jesus Christ and believes will be saved. But these parents wouldn't confess the name of Christ because they were afraid that they'd be disfellowshipped from the Jewish church temple. So
And the son
quite
was,
scary.
remember? He was kicked out of the temple.
Yes.
Yeah, the son was.
Yeah.
We read 13 manuscript releases, 359. I'm just going to read it again. I saw the... let me just check what I'm reading.
13 manuscript releases is what you said.
Yeah, let me just check something. Yes. What I did when I read the 30 manuscript releases, I just cut into the paragraph. I'm going to read the whole paragraph now. I'm going to read the whole paragraph. 13 MR, 359, paragraph 1. I saw the chart-making business was all wrong. Oh, the date for this is 1853. This is 1853, and this is 1850. So the chart's been produced, so now she's going to comment on this. I saw the chart-making business was all wrong. It originated with Brother Rhodes and was followed out by Brother Case. Means have been spent in making charts and forming uncouth, disgusting images. It was disgusting, remember I said that? To represent angels and the glorious Jesus. Such things I saw were displeasing to God. I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart by Brother Nichols. I saw that there was a prophecy of this chart in the Bible. And if this chart was designed for God's people, if it is sufficient for one, it is for another. And if one needed a new chart painted on a larger scale, all need it just as much. Talking about this chart. I saw that it was a restless, uneasy, unsatisfied, ungrateful feeling for Brother Case that designed another chart. I saw that these painted charts had a bad effect upon the congregation. It caused the light, chaffy spirit of ridicule to be in the meeting. I saw that the charts ordered by God, 2 charts were ordered by God, struck the mind favourably even without an explanation. There is something light, lovely and heavenly in the representation of the angels on the chart. I was going to a prophecy school in Europe a few years ago. It was in Switzerland, and I took these 2 charts with me. They were rolled up, and I was going through passport control and customs, and they stopped me because I had this tube. I don't know why they stopped me, but I had the tube anyway. And he says, "What's in this? What's in the tube?" So I opened them up and showed it to him. And he started looking at them, and he thought, "This must be some ancient antiquities." He says, "And how much are these worth?" Because they look favourable, they look like there's something serious about these things, that they'd have some value. They want some sort of cheap, nasty, not the quality of it, but just the graphics on it, just the look of it. This person got concerned that I was trafficking some kind of ancient manuscripts or something. I thought that was interesting.
I actually have often wondered why the blue around his head and his waist and stuff. A nice looking Jesus, you know.
we'll ask Mr. Himes when we see him why he did that. I don't know.
It's almost Catholic though.
I
With
can't-
the glow on his head and all that kind of stuff.
I can't say. All I could think, well,
Has
you
to
know,
be pleasing to the eye.
Well-
Can't
well,
be offensive.
the thing is, he's naked anyway in real life.
Yeah.
But
Covers
this
up.
purple would have been the purple that
Is
they.
that purple? I can see
It's
it's
more
blue.
Well, I'm not saying it's not blue, but I don't know what the original is. I don't know what it looked
'Cause
like.
these are reproductions.
Why
I
it's-
just
why
wondered
it's
why
purple.
we have such a pretty looking Jesus up there with the Catholic glow around his head and stuff like that.
I wouldn't worry about it because if it's ordained by God, we'll just go with that.
There is something light, lovely, and heavenly in the representation of the angels of the chart. The mind is almost imperceptibly led to God in heaven. But the other charts that have been gotten up discuss the mind and cause the mind to dwell more on earth than heaven. Then she says this: I saw that if the means that had been wasted in getting out charts had been spent in getting out the truth, clear before the brethren and publishing tracts, etc., it would have done much good and saved souls. I saw that the chart-making business has spread like the fever. So all this chart-making business is not good. There's only 2 charts that she recommends, these 2 charts. I'll be careful with that because she does make some comments about other charts. But in the context of what our discussion is with respect to the 2520. Didn't cover all of that.
So you think God would have had the mind of the grasp of the artist as well?
She says that. I don't know how we can avoid
No.
getting into that. Yeah,
Yeah.
she
So I'm
says.
looking at the beasts and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he is patient with our humanness too, isn't he? Like
Yeah.
he is the
Yeah.
human version, so
Yes.
he's not asking for a perfect, picture. He's not asking human beings to make a perfect picture. It's obvious that there's man.
We understand that, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more what
This
it
is-
communicates.
Yeah, this is
in
a human
general.
being's understanding of what he's reading.
Yeah.
She says that the angels, you like the way they look and stuff.
So there you go.
I just go with what she says.
Well, makes you pay more attention to the pictures, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
So we read the statement from Great Controversy, 351, paragraph 1 this morning. We're going to go back into it now in a little bit more depth. So the 3 points she says is, so Miller, so you need to have it on your phone if you've got
Is this
access to
great
your phone.
controversy now?
351, paragraph 1, so we can go through it together. So you can see what I'm saying, if you have it. As you're looking for it, I'll begin to read the paragraph. The experience of the disciples who preached the gospel of the kingdom,
351.
351, paragraph 1. The experience of the disciples who preached the gospel of the kingdom at the first advent of Christ had its counterpart in the experience of those who proclaimed the message of his second advent. As the disciples went out preaching, the time is fulfilled, the kingdom of God is at hand, so Miller and his associates proclaimed. Are we all there?
No. I'm just going to find the chapter. It's a little bit hard to.
Chapter 19.
Ah, thank you. So 351.
On iPhones, do you not have, you can't go directly to the...
Yeah. It's just
It's okay.
search.
I don't know how it's set out.
You get used to it once you get used to it. Yeah.
A great controversy. Why didn't you just search for the...
It's light through dark.
Your fundamental education?
I knew that.
There it is there. Light through dark. Chapter 19. We don't use these a lot. We tend to use.
Yeah, okay. I see your problem. You don't have the little light bulb. Do you have the little light?
Are we all there?
Yeah, sorry.
It's all good. It's all be me. Scroll down the pages. Keep going until you start.
Oh, the people at the back.
Oh, good. Okay, well, that's all right. I thought I was
Apparently, well, not apparently, but I've seen it on Theodore. He has a paper that he's written on it, and he shows that Miller writes about that, what in here, great controversy, what you're about to read. Miller's writing his own version of it, and then you see this one, great controversy, and you can see how they fit together, and that she's actually talking about.
She's going to quote. We're going to read. She's actually going to quote extensively from Miller's work.
Yeah,
in
and when you
this
see
passage.
his, you can see it's just a jigsaw puzzle. It just fits together perfectly. When you see them side by side.
We've already done that. What we're going to read here is the same information that we just read from Early Writings 229 and William Miller's Apology and Defence. This is just another version of it. It's the same statement. It's not going to be anything new. We already read it. We already read it when he says, I had three commencements, 677, 457, and 508. All we're going to see is the same thing. That's what's on the paper that Brother Theodore's done. It's not any different. Yeah. Are we all there now?
Yes. Oh, well, I am.
People are still struggling?
Yeah, that's right.
Have you found it?
Find it? I think that
We
one
need some
was.
to rescue you.
I can show you, perhaps,
Yeah.
if it's the same program.
Yeah, I did have it up before. That particular one is on there. The other ones weren't. Great controversies.
When we do a 3-month prophecy school, we spend the first few days teaching people how to use their computers, the apps and software on that. I don't mean not to computers, and how to search properly, because there's many tricks and things. Most people have got laptops and not MacBook Pros and things.
Do they? That PC is not enough.
Yeah, most people don't. I don't use
So most people got PCs not Apple. The thing is, I've just got an Apple recently.
in England. The quality is strict. On laptops, I mean. So eSword is the program to go for.
Yeah, we use it, so.
Yeah.
But I use it on Apple anyway.
I want to know how many plastic plates and cutlery up there. Did they have plates and cutlery? Maybe, I won't say you, but save us washing up.
Oh, healthcare fund.
Oh.
That's the National Health
Pretty
Fund.
bad.
I
believe.
Sounds
Oh,
like
your one or my one?
well, everybody's.
Okay.
I think they're pretty good.
Not compared to Australia.
I don't know.
Nothing's as good as Australia's.
No, well,
Honestly.
I've worked with people who
Everything here is better.
who come over here and they say, oh,
I didn't know. I didn't
I
know.
can't believe it, everything's better.
oh, well, I say,
Why would you make it? I can't do anything that isn't. Because I've been here. Are we all there? Amen. Okay. So Miller,
Oh, thanks.
so Miller and his associates proclaimed the following: the longest and the last.
Yeah.
The longest and the last prophetic period. Are we here yet?
Yes.
Period singular.
Yes.
Is about to finish. The next one. That the judgment was at hand. And the next point.
The everlasting kingdom was to be ushered in.
Kingdom is coming. So these are the 3 points that she's picking up. And who's doing all of this? He says, so Miller and his associates proclaim. So who's doing all of this?
Miller's
This is Miller.
Yeah.
So Miller and his associates.
So Miller is doing 3 things. He's talking about the longest and the last prophetic period, and it's about to finish. He's talking about the judgment is at hand, which means it's just about to come, and the kingdom is coming. So I'll do that. The judgment is coming, and the longest and the last period is coming to its end. So they've all got coming. They're all coming to some point. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Everybody read that with me? Yeah. We read in Early Writings 229, he's given the commencement of the chain of truth. The commencement of the chain of truth, if this is our chain, he's given this. And what else is he given? The links.
Yes.
Okay, so here's 2 links, chain of truth, and then he says in his own writing, William Miller's Apology and Defence, 1845, he says, I studied 3 prophecies. What are the 3 prophecies he studies? The 7 times, the 2300 days,
And the 1335.
and he mentions the 1335. Are we okay with all of that? And why does he focus on this and he's not focusing on this? Because he's on the chart. Why does he not mention this? What's the focus about these? What's so special about these things? What's so special about them is the following. On this chart, where does 677 take you? And where does 457 take you? And where does 508 take you? So he understands that all of these take you to the same point. That's why he's focused upon these things. So they're all taking you to the same point. This is William Miller's logic. So here it says the following. The longest and the last period is coming to an end. Or I'm just going to say coming. So here it's coming. Then the judgment is also doing what? Coming. And the kingdom is what? Coming. So the reason she's saying that Miller is proclaiming 3 things because they're all coming. And William Miller, his whole message is, what is his message? Daniel 8:14, which is what? It's coming in 1843. He's got how many messages? 1 message. 1843. So when he says, I'm talking about the longest and the last period, it's coming. When's it going to come? 1843. It has to. The judgment is coming. When's that going to come?
1843.
Okay, look. It says the longest and the last period. Whatever number you want to come up with, if it's the 2300 days, when's it coming? It's coming, whatever number, whichever prophecy you want to believe, it's 1843, you know that. And this judgment that's coming, it says, the cleansing of the sanctuary, the earth is going to be cleansed. How does the earth get cleansed? With fire. At the second coming, because God's going to come and judge the world. That's the judgment. So when he talks about judgment, that is 1843. And then it says the kingdom is coming. What is this kingdom? This is the second advent. Christ is coming back to earth on a cloud to bring back his people. And when's that going to happen? In 1843. Because the earth is the sanctuary and he's going to come and cleanse the earth. So it's all headed to 1843. 3 things, the longest period, the judgment, and the kingdom is coming. And they're all connected to Daniel 8:14. Now, is it coincidence that you've got 3 things here that are all headed to the same point? And that point, by the way, in Miller's own words, and we read it in his Apology and Defence, is 1843. So, this is not rocket science, but Early Writings 229 and William Miller's Apology and Defence, page 11. I think it's page 11. Page 11. This statement here is exactly the same as this statement here in Great Controversy 351. There's no difference between them. This is line upon line teaching. You don't have to worry about grammar. It's not complicated. It's easy to see. Don't have to get bogged down in all the intricacies. It's dealing with three separate things. And there's three separate things, and they're all heading to 1843. These are all heading to 1843. So they have to be dealing with the same subject.
And that's paragraph 9, isn't it? That 229? Early writing? 229, paragraph 9?
It's, you know,
Hold on, to paragraph 1.
1.
Yeah, 229.1.
So, this prophecy here, 677, what is this time prophecy? It's the 2520, and we've just defined it as being what? The?
Truth. Well, everlasting gospel.
Excellent. The vision, the truth, the everlasting gospel. So, here it is. Look on the chart. On the chart, what is the longest time prophecy you have on this chart? It's the 2520. So you know that. It's the longest time prophecy. The longest and the last prophetic period is coming to its end, 1843. Then it talks about the judgment. So let's talk about the judgment. 457 is what prophecy? The 2300 days. Because what's Christ going to do when he comes to earth? He's going to bring judgment with him. How do you know that? Because, actually, how do you know that? My reward is with me. But what's the verses that we've been speaking? Let's go to a verse.
What was the question?
Judgment.
Yeah.
Judgment. 457 is 2300 days. What's this got to do with judgment?
He God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come.
For the hour of his judgment is come. Revelation 14 was there. Brother Patrick?
Oh,
yeah.
I was going to Leviticus 23. Everyone will be cut off from his people on that day. Who's not? But that's where it derived. It is for the day of judgment, the day of atonement.
So here it is. Revelation 14. The hour of his judgment has come. This is 2300 days. So that's judgment. And there's only one more, 508. 508 is what prophecy? 1335. And this prophecy talks about a blessing. Should we read this one? Daniel 11, Daniel 12. Verse 11.
We're on 65-day prophecy. No,
Daniel,
the other one.
okay.
Sorry, the 65-day prophecy was the other one. Yeah, it was 677.
677, we've just dealt with that one.
Yeah. 65-day prophecy.
And why are you bringing that up?
I don't know. It's just 457 from 508. There's what, 65 difference? No, I don't know. My maths is all over the place.
Okay, I've not done any maths.
Yeah.
There's no maths here or anything.
Where's that found?
Which one?
The last one that we
Yeah, Daniel 12.
Yes.
We're in Daniel chapter 12.
Yeah.
We're going to start in verse 11.
These are first beginning dates, and then the time prophecies.
I've got people confused. What are we confused about?
How
First time I looked at it. Yeah.
how 508 equals 1335.
Which one? This last one. But we've mentioned it enough times though. Yeah? This is AD 508,
Which group?
Yeah, Daniel 12, 11.
457 BC, and this is BC as well. Let's stop for a second. Let's stop. Let's look at this a little bit.
Oh, 508 AD.
There's 80.
Yeah, that's why I say 43.
Okay.
Do we know it now or it doesn't help? Let's go. Let's do a bit of history.
Appointment of the bishop.
Let's do a bit of history.
Papacy
So
comes in.
we're in the year 31 BC. And what happens in 31 BC? There's a battle.
Oh, BC. Yeah. I did the same.
There's a battle.
And,
So-
and,
oh, sorry.
and
Pagan Rome became supreme.
Actium.
So
Yes,
this is Egypt.
What became?
Battle
This
of
is
Actium.
Cleopatra.
there we go.
Remember?
Yes.
Okay. And it's not Egypt. Who is it?
It's Syria.
Greece.
It's Greece.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Greece,
Yeah.
Greece, Greece.
King of the South.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Cleopatra. They're going to defeat Cleopatra. Who did they defeat first? Syria.
Yeah.
And then Israel,
Yeah.
the Pleasant Land, and then Egypt.
Okay.
Okay, once you take down 1, 2, 3 people, then you become the king. Rome's the king. Pagan Rome. It's going to rule till you get to the year 330 AD.
150 years.
So we're at 330 AD, and in 330 AD, Pagan Rome, he's tired of where it's living. He wants to move. He wants to move, and he's going to go from Rome down to sunnier climes into Turkey.
Why?
Why?
Because he can.
Why the transition? I mean,
The reason why is because he's scared.
of who?
He's scared of Genghis Khan and his crowd, who are going to come and punish him for messing around.
All this time, all these theologians have been teaching in the classroom is because of the first four trumpets. And yet, in my
Genghis
mind,
Khan-
my reason that the first four trumpets started in 395 AD.
Genghis
Doesn't make
Khan-
sense.
Is
A trumpet.
one of the trumpets. Some agreeing with that.
Never heard of that name as part of the trumpet before.
Oh, okay.
First time.
That's another
What's
study on
Genghis
the
Khan?
trumpets.
What are the first four trumpets?
So
But it makes sense.
he's going to leave home
Uriah Smith's books were on that.
because he's scared.
Is that when they go to Constantinople? Is that they're moving to Constantinople?
Okay, let's all get back together again, please. Yeah, let's all get back this end. This is pagan Rome.
Mm-hmm.
In 330 AD, pagan Rome is going to leave Rome and it's going to move to Turkey. Yeah? Yeah.
Constantine.
So he's going to leave because he's worried. Because it doesn't matter. I'm going to get distracted. So he's going to leave anyway. When he leaves, he's going to leave a throne and his crown. And where does he leave it? In the city of Rome. So there's no king in the city of Rome, and someone's going to come in and take his seat. So he's going to come take his seat. And he's got problems. He's got problems because there's many things to sort out before he can really take his official title and be inaugurated. So it's going to take him 200 years to get there. Thereabouts. So he's going to do all of this manoeuvring and he's going to almost get there, and then there's in 508 there's a battle. It's between France and Portugal. But this is
So close.
I'll just put Clovis, and this is the Visigoths. And the Visigoths are brought to view here on this chart. Here they are, the Visigoths. It's between the Visigoths and the Franks. These two people are fighting. We'll change that to Franks. Okay, so once that's done, the papacy is almost there. It's almost arrived. this nation here was, the Franks are Catholic, by the way. They've become Catholic, and these are not Catholic. Whatever they are, it doesn't really matter. So you've got two options. You can either be Catholic, which is the transgression of desolation, or you can be non-Catholic, and then you'd be the daily. You've got a choice of two. So if the Franks are Catholic, what are they part of? They're part of this system. And if you're not Catholic, you're part of this thing. Okay? So these Visigoths, they're not Catholic, they're going to go into a fight with Clovis, and they're going to be destroyed. And they're going to be taken out of the way. In that battle in 508. So the Visigoths are taken out. But the Catholics still can't get onto still get power yet. They've still got to wait a little bit longer. And the reason they've got to wait a little bit longer is because the papacy is not old enough to begin its work. So another name for the papacy is Christ. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Antichrist.
Yeah.
And when Christ came on the earth the first time, what was his job? He was a priest.
I was just saying he wasn't old enough because he wasn't 30 years old.
Yes, he's not old enough. So when Christ comes to earth, he's a priest. How long does he have to wait before he can take up his priestly office?
30.
Because the Bible teaches you have to be 30 years old. And because he's the Antichrist, he has to do the same. So he has to wait till he's 30 years old. So if you want to look at it this way, here's the papacy is born, and he's going to wait till he's 30 years old before he can begin his priestly work. So 508 plus 30 is 538. And then he's going to rule isn't the right word, he's going to minister for how long?
3.5 times.
For 3.5 times, which is 1260 days or years. And here's Christ. Christ is born. Then Christ is baptized.
Yeah.
And he's how old? 30 years old.
Yeah.
And he's born in 4 BC. And he gets baptized in 27 AD. And then he's going to minister for 3.5 times, 3.5 years. And then what's going to happen to Christ? He's going to be crucified. Trick question. What happens here? That was 538. This is 1798. 1798? You haven't heard about my question yet?
The
I
Antichrist is crucified.
haven't told you what the question is yet. You give me the answer.
I said, what happens here?
That wasn't my question. So my question was... That wasn't my question. My question is this. He gets a deadly wound in 1798. We all know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. When does a deadly wound get healed?
No.
Okay, so we've got lots of answers.
1798.
We've got lots of answers.
Oh.
So this is the cross. This is the cross. The cross, yeah? We'll hear the cross. And this happens on what day?
31.
Friday.
I
Yeah.
thought you said date.
Then you've got Sabbath.
14th day of Nisan.
And then you've got Sunday. So you've got these 3 steps. And he gets resurrected here.
Yeah.
So you can see that this Antichrist is going to get resurrected during these 3 days. 1, 2, 3.
Right.
And it takes 46 years to build a temple.
Yeah.
And it takes 3 days to build a temple. And those 3 days are 3 years. And there are also 3 steps, the 1, 2, 3 steps of the everlasting gospel. So you know it's in this time period here, from 1798 to 1844, that this deadly wound or the resurrection is going to occur, but it takes an awful long time and it's still not finished yet. Still not fully resurrected, but the process begins immediately. So where are we going to start that? We're going to start it here in 508, and we're going to go all the way down to here, and we're going to do 1335. Yeah.
Daniel 12:11 says 1,290 days.
Here it is, 1,290 days. It's 1,260 plus 30, 1,290. You okay? Then the next verse, read the next verse. Blessed is he.
He that waiteth and cometh to the
1,305
and 30 days.
So 1,305 add 30 is 1335. So here's our 1335. Starts here at 508. And if they'll do the numbers for us. The numbers are here. You've got 508, 1335, and it adds up to 1843. Okay? You okay with that? So this is going to take you to 1843. So
the question
we're at 1843, and it says, we'll read the verse, blessed is he that waited and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days. So you need to know a bit about Millerite history, which you've already done, but we'll just quickly review it. So, Millerite history, 1840, 42, April the 18th, 1844, and April the 18th, 44, and April the 19th, 44. Okay, so April the 18th is what day? It's New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And April the 19th is New Year's Day. So here's New Year's Day, and this is New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah? Does that make sense? That's like our December the 31st and January the 1st,
Yeah.
but it's not. But it's in April.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 2 days here. 1, 2. So this is New Year's Eve. So this is the last day of this year, which is 1843, and this is the first day of 1844. So you've switched years.
So which calendar was that? That was the...
This is a Jewish calendar.
Jewish.
We haven't discussed this,
Yeah.
so I didn't want to get bogged down in this.
Carry out.
So the technical term is that this is a Karaite or Jewish calendar. And they're going to combine that calendar with our calendar.
Yeah.
So you can go to study, don't let that distract you. So for the purposes, we understand how you go from 1843 to 1844. So it says, oh, and what's going to happen here? There's going to be a disappointment. And why are they going to get a disappointment? Because they think, what's going to happen? They think the longest and the last period is going to come to an end. They think that the judgment is going to happen, and they think the kingdom is coming. So they think all of that. But when you get to the last day, New Year's Eve, and then you get to, not midnight, but you get to sunset on that day, because they're going to be like our Sabbath keepers. When you get to sunset, you okay with that? You're on sunset on the 18th. So it's afternoon, the sunset, and now you're in the evening, just like we are on Friday evening. Now you're into, what day are you into?
Following day.
We're on to the 19th now. 19th doesn't start at 12 o'clock midnight. It starts in the evening, just like we start Sabbath in the evening. Same way, but we call it the 19th. So you get to night time, and then you're going to flip over onto the next day. And now you're in New Year's Day, and Christ hasn't come. And he has to have come. The day before was the last opportunity for him to come. So if he hasn't come now, you've made a mistake. Something's gone wrong. And everybody is going to collapse. They're going to lose their faith, and they're going to be worried. No one's talking to each other, and everybody goes to sleep. So there are many people who fell off the way, or as Ellen White would say, they fell off the path into the wicked world below. But some people went all the way through here, and they got to the very end here. They held on, and then they go to the next day, and Christ hasn't come. And the vast majority of those people, they were just time servers. They were there because they were scared, they were worried or whatever, and they're all going to fall off. And there's only going to be, whatever the number is, it doesn't matter. There's only going to be some people who have passed this test. And now, once you get to this point, you've only got a few months. If I put this as October 22nd, it's only 6 months to go, and Christ is going to come. Very soon after this, they're going to work out that Christ is coming. And so, what's the message in this time period? Matthew 25, behold, the bridegroom is coming. So, this message here of behold the bridegroom coming, this is a king, and the king is the owner of a kingdom, and he's coming. So, if you pass all of these tests, the next day on the 19th, you carry on holding firm, this message is going to hit you that what's coming? The kingdom is coming. And what would this say? The kingdom is coming. So this message here about the kingdom is coming is a 1335. Because they actually thought that the kingdom was going to come where? Here or here?
Here.
They said the kingdom's coming here, and the message that they're delivering is this 1335, which takes you all the way to here. And so this message here, the kingdom is coming, is the fact that they were expecting the bridegroom to come when? Here. In fact, they were pronouncing the bridegroom's coming. They were misapplying the parable of the 10 virgins, but they were saying the bridegroom's coming, it's coming. Because that's what this whole message is about. And so this message here of the kingdom coming is based upon this 1335. Just as it is when they switch over next year, they're going to carry on giving this message. And you are blessed if you passed all these tests and you've now entered into this history here, this 6th month, or they call it the 7th month movement. Did you have a question? Okay. Because I thought you were going to ask it, but I didn't let you answer your statement. I was good. I thought I'd probably answer it. Great.
So what was it 6 months later?
It depends how you calculate. If you include April, but you go April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 6 months. They call it the 7th month movement because October is the 7th month in the Jewish calendar. That's the 7th month, so that's how they call it the 7th month movement. Not because it's 7 months long, but it's because the 7th month. But often the Jews would calculate or include the first month. So if I did it this way, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. If you include April, it becomes 7 months. Or if you don't, the way we do it, we'd start with April, it'd be May would be number 1. But it's the 7th month. It's going to hit in the 7th month, and technically it is 7 months long. The way you would look at it. But this message here is that the bridegroom's coming. This is the king. We'll put that here. The king, Dom, is coming. So here's these 3 messages. You've got the longest and last prophetic period, the judgment, and the kingdom is coming. And all of these 3 are dealing with these 3 prophecies here, and I've explained all the history behind them. There's still a bit more that we can go through. It just doesn't stop. There's always more. Okay, we're going to read in 351. It says that the longest and last prophetic period brought to view in the Bible was about to expire.
Yeah.
And who's preaching this message? William Miller. This is William Miller's message. He says the longest and last prophetic period is about to... This is the 2520. The longest and the last period is the 2520. We're going to show you that. I'll give you a text for that. Then it says that the judgment was at hand. The hour of his judgment is Daniel 8:14, and that's the 2300 days. And then it says the everlasting kingdom was to be ushered in. This is the 1335. Blessed is he that comes and participates in this cry that the bridegroom's going to come. So let's read from, this is the coding for it, 1843. It's written by Apollos Hale, and it's called Second Advent Movement. The Second Advent Movement, page 93. You may not have this on your phone. You need a certain app to get this one, so you may not have this one. Easily available on the internet.
What's that from?
That's the year it was published, 1843.
Yeah.
The author is Apollos Hale, who was a Millerite, APH. The publication is The Second Advent Movement, and it's page 93.
Sorry, what was the name of the book again?
The second
The Second Advent Movement.
Second Advent Manual?
Movement.
Manual.
Manual.
Yeah.
Second Advent Manual. Let's read what's written here. It says, the first grand period. What would be the first grand period? It's number one, and it's the grandest one. Then it says the first grand period, which includes all the rest. Where have we tackled that? The grand period that includes everything else.
Yeah.
The vision. The vision includes everything else. This is the chain of truth with one commencement date. Here's our chain of truth. It has one commencement date and it has links in it. So, this is the language that this man is using. The first grand period, which includes all the rest, and expresses the whole time of the usurpation and triumph of the different forms of worldly power, together with the depression of the visible kingdom of God, begins where everyone would suppose it must begin. Where would you suppose it must begin? Because it says everyone supposes it begins here. Maybe we don't even understand what we just read. Let me explain it. It says there's this period of time, a grand period, and everything's included in this, and it expresses the whole time period that worldly powers. So there's these worldly powers together, they're going to come together and they're going to depress or push down the visible kingdom of God. What is the visible kingdom of God?
The people of God.
The invisible kingdom is in heaven because you can't see it. And so the visible kingdom is what you can see, God's people on earth. So these worldly powers are going to press down God's people, beginning where everybody thinks it should begin. Where would you begin the pressing down of God's people? When you take the leaders down. So we had this story here, and we had Hoshea, and even though we had Zedekiah here, Zedekiah was the full payment, but you had a deposit that was paid before that. And who was that? Manasseh was over here. Here's Manasseh. Manasseh is the down payment. So this one here and this one here, they mark when the worldly powers are going to depress or push down the visible kingdom of God. And everybody can see that. That's what he's just said. That's what he said. At the passing away of the independence from the theocracy, an event predicted centuries before it took place. Who predicted the end of the theocracy? Who predicted all of this?
Miller.
We call this the 2520 or the 7 times. Who was talking about the 7 times?
Moses. Moses, yeah, Leviticus.
So Moses is here. Moses, Leviticus. He's predicting all of this, and he says centuries before he predicted it, and deplored as the opening of the full tide of the troubles for centuries after. It terminates with the overthrow of all worldly power and the restoration of the visible kingdom of God on earth, with him upon its throne, whose right it is to reign. Do we know what Bible verse this is? With him upon its throne, this is the bit, whose right it is to throne. Sorry, whose right it is to reign. So you need to find out what Bible verse is. I'm not going to tell you. You have to study that one out for yourself. It's not germane to this study, but there's a Bible verse here. To order and to establish it with judgment and with justice, henceforth forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Another Bible verse there. Don't look for the Bible verses. Next paragraph, it says, that was the first grand period. It contains everything. Then it says, the second of these periods, so there's two. I'm just going to drop down to the next paragraph. It says, the third. So there are three periods. The grand period, the second period, and the third. We'll go back to the second. The second of these periods begins at a most important point in the history of the depressed covenant people of God. The issuing of an edict in their favour under the provisions of which they experienced a partial, though temporary, deliverance from a condition which threatened their political existence long before it actually took place. But through this period commences sometime after, though this period commences sometime after the first, they terminate together. You need to be good at English to live in Victorian America, because that's hard going. So here you are, running down the history. We've tackled this one, which is the grand one.
Yeah.
Then we're going to deal with the second one. So that was number one and number two. And it says, begins at a most important point in the history of the depressed covenant people of God, the issuing of a decree or an edict. What decrees or edicts do we know that's passed after Zedekiah going to Babylon?
457.
We mentioned it. Remember the three decrees?
Yes.
What's this there? King Cyrus,
Darius.
Darius, and
Artaxerxes.
Artaxerxes. So here's our decrees. This is the edict that's being spoken of here. Under the provisions of which they experienced a partial, though temporary, deliverance. They're going to be taken out of Babylon. Is it permanent? No. Because you keep on getting this theme that they're going to be punished and restored, punished and restored. It's a partial restoration. When they're going to get finally taken out? AD 70. That's what he's referring to. From a condition which threatened their political existence long before it actually took place. But though this period commenced sometime after the first, they terminate together. So what's this one then? This must be the 2300 days.
Yeah.
Because this one and this one terminate at the same point in 1843.
Yeah.
This one and this one. Then he's going to say this, the third brings to that point which the final change in the visible agents of the long continued subjection of the people of God took place. So distinctly pointed out by Daniel, now in the book of Daniel, but more clearly brought to view by the revelator John, and so well understood by Paul, though future to his day. Why does she bring in Paul? She's got Daniel, John and Paul, because Paul says in 2 Thessalonians that Christ is not going to come back until the man of sin is revealed. And where does the man of sin be revealed? When he becomes a priest. How old do you have to be? 30 years old. So here's the priest, and now he's revealed. And Christ has to come after that. So this is what he's talking about. He says, these last named periods that given for the desolation of the sanctuary, which is the 2300 days, and the period at the end of which Daniel shall stand in his lot, the 1335s, terminate together, as is evident both from the nature of the prophecy in each case and from the only possible date for their commencement. One began 457, and the 70 weeks are at once the seal of its truth and the pledge of its fulfillment in 1843. Then she's going to quote, he's going to quote 508, which is going to take you again to the same place. And he says at the very beginning of that, these last named periods, he's going to mention the 2300 and the 1335. So he's going to mention the last two, the second and the third. And the only reason he's going to mention the last two, because he said at the very beginning, the first grand period, which includes all the rest. So can we see that this period includes this one and this one? Yes. They're all included in the same pattern. So here's one of William Miller's contemporaries. He's saying the same thing, these three prophecies. So we've got another person saying the same thing. Now we're going to read This is from William Miller's memoirs. This is from his memoirs. This was written by Bliss, page 74. I haven't got the coding for this, but this is the memoirs.
Written by Bliss.
It's a good book to read. You should read this
Sylvester
book.
Bliss.
Page 74.
Where can you get it from?
MWM.
It's on in the Pioneer stuff. It's in there.
The memoirs of William Miller.
Yeah.
Page 74. You can probably get it down. You can download a PDF from the
Yeah,
internet.
online you can get them.
I think FFA have it in PDF
Yeah.
on the website.
On the website.
Yeah.
There's many places you can get it.
Page 74.
Page 74.
It's a very good read.
This is what he's going to say.
Just go down to the picture of America, go.
When therefore I found the 23 prophetic days, which were to mark the length of the vision from the Persian to the end of the fourth kingdom, we've discussed that, the 7 times continuance of the dispersion of God's people, mentioned that's the 25:20, the 1335 prophetic days to the standing of Daniel in his lot, we've mentioned that, all evidently extending to the Advent, we've discussed that. So here William Miller is talking about these 3 dates, and then he's going to say, he's going to say a bit more, but we don't need to read any of that. I just want to pick up these 3 points. Apollos Hale has defined these 3. William Miller has defined these 3. We read his Apology and Defence, and now we've read his memoir. It's all the same. And just want to pick up one more point in his statement. He says, let me read it all evidently extending to the Advent with the other prophetical period, I could but regard them as the times before appointed, which God has revealed unto his servants the prophets. I was fully convinced that all scripture given by inspiration of God is profitable, that it came not at any time by the will of man, but was written as holy men were moved by the Holy Ghost, and was written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. I could but regard the chronological portions of the Bible as being much a portion of the Word of God, and as much entitled to our serious consideration as any other portion of the scriptures. So all he said here, I could but regard the chronological portions. So what are the chronological portions he's referring to? What are the chronological portions of the scripture compared to, say, the Gospels or the Epistles? In the context, it's all taken from the same passage. He talks about the 2300, the 7 times 1335. Then he says they all come to the Advent. Then he says, after all this study, this is what the conclusion I came to. I could but regard the chronological portions as being just as important as all the rest of the Bible. So what are the chronological portions? It's all of these 3. These are the chronological portions. So I've got here chronological portions because I want us to remember that. And let's go to Great Controversy now. Page 323. A few pages back in the Great Controversy.
323.
Great Controversy 323, paragraph 2. $323, did I say?
Yes.
Paragraph 2. You'll notice, hopefully in your apps, I will wait till we get there. 323, paragraph 2.
Or 2 of them.
Good to know what chapter.
Chapter 18, the American Reformer.
Yeah, okay. 323.
Are we there? Yeah. Another kind of evidence that vitally affected my mind, he says, she's quoting William Miller. This is not Ellen White's writing, this is William Miller she's quoting, because it's in quotation marks. Another kind of evidence that vitally affected my mind, he says, William Miller says, was the chronology of the scriptures. So she's dealing with what? The chronology of the scriptures. And what do we have here?
Chronology.
The chronological portions, he said. And now, this is what she's quoting him to say. Another kind of evidence that vitally affected my mind, he says, was the chronology of the scriptures. I found that predicted events which had been fulfilled in the past often occurred within a given time. The 120 years to the flood, the 7 days that were to precede it, the 40 days of predicted rain, the 400 years of the sojourn of Abraham's seed. What are all these on a... These are all waymarks, aren't they? You see, all these are waymarks, and he's going to go on and quoting, and he's quoting from Bliss, pages 74 and 75.
Is this the same book?
Same book, same place. So all of this is being quoted, and then I'm going to get to the end of the paragraph. It says, the events limited by these times were all once only a matter of prophecy and were fulfilled in accordance with the predictions. Are we all there?
Yes.
Next paragraph. When therefore he found in his study of the Bible various chronological periods that according to his understanding of them extended to the second coming of Christ, he could not but regard them as the times before appointed. Are we there?
Yes.
So we're in 324, paragraph 1. Is everybody there?
Yes.
It begins with when. Is when in quotation marks? No, so who's this now? This is Ellen White. Ellen White says this. When therefore he found in his study of the Bible various chronological periods. Where did she get that chronological periods from? Right here, the chronological portions that Bliss says, but she's quoting it as chronological periods. And what were those chronological portions that Bliss was talking about? These three prophecies, including the 2520. So Bliss has included the 2520, and she's saying this. When therefore he found in the study of the Bible various chronological periods that according to his understanding of them extended to the second coming of Christ, he could not but regard them as the times before appointed, which God had revealed unto his servants. The secret thing, says Moses, and he's going to go down and carry on quoting. I'll go down to the bottom. The students of God's word may then confidently expect to find the most stupendous event to take place in human history clearly pointed out in the scriptures of truth. So we've just read from 324.1, but what I want us to notice is, in her own words, she says various chronological periods extended to the second coming. She's telling you what William Miller is teaching, and she's saying it in her own words. Now, I'm not saying she agrees with it, but she's just telling you the facts of what's going on. And let me just check what I want to get. I want us to get from this. So what's happening here is she's quoting from Bliss's book in The Great Controversy, and if you put these two things together, what she's saying is the following. When therefore he found in his study of the Bible various chronological periods that according to his understanding of them extended to the second coming of Christ, this is the chronological periods that he himself has spoken about, and he told you what they were: the 2300 prophetic days, the 7 times, and the 1335. All of this is referring to the prophetic periods that she's talking about. Hopefully we're all okay with that. And he can only be talking about those 3 prophetic periods because they're the only ones that extend to the coming of Christ. He can't be dealing with the 1260 or any other prophecy. He has to be dealing with 1, 2 and 3. And she's quoting all of this, and she's saying this is what he's teaching. Now let's come back to 351 in conclusion.
351.
GC.
GC, doing GC 351.
If you go sideways, you skip a chapter.
And pick up one more.
Yeah, it's 351, the experience of the disciples.
Okay, so we're back in this. We're back in the passage of 351, and let's read this again. The preaching of the disciples in regard to time was based on the 70 weeks of Daniel 9. Are we all there? The preaching of the disciples in regard to time was based on the 70 weeks of Daniel 9. The message given by Miller and Associates announced the termination of the 2300 days of Daniel 8:14, of which the 70 weeks form a part. The preaching of each was based upon the fulfillment of a different portion of the same great prophetic period. So let's try and grapple with this. Let's rub this out. The 2300 days can be broken down into two segments. 70 weeks, which is 490 years, and 1810. And this is for the Jews, and this is for the Gentiles. And the disciples are here. And William Miller is here. So we've got to understand what she's talking about here. This is the 2300 days. What was William Miller's message? His message was the 7 times. His message was the 2300 days. And his message was the 1335. 3 messages. Is his message 1810? Anywhere here? There's no 1810.
No.
And is his message 490? No. So his message is very specific. Because these two are part of
2300.
this prophecy here. But this is how the church would have you to understand this passage. They'd have you to understand it in this following way. The preaching of the disciples in regard to time was based upon the 70 weeks of Daniel 9. The message given by Miller and his associates announced the termination of the 2300 days of Daniel 8:14, of which the 70 weeks form a part. The 70 weeks form a part of this prophecy. That's all fine. Now this is where it gets difficult. It says, the preaching of each was based upon the fulfillment of a different portion of the same great prophetic period. Now the church teaches you what is the great prophetic period.
2300.
They teach you it's this. They say this is the great period. Alan White's already said that the disciples are preaching what? The 70-week portion. And then it says, the preaching of each was based upon a fulfillment of a different portion. How many portions of the 2300 days are there? 2. And the disciples are doing one portion, so that must mean the Millerites are doing the other portion. So their message would be, everybody, 1810 years is ending, you need to get ready. Because the disciples said, the 70 weeks is ending, something's happening. So Miller would have had to say, 1810 years is happening, you need to get ready. But you don't see 1810 in his messages. He's not dealing with the 1810. If you're going to make the 2300 the great prophetic period, because it says, I'll do it again, the preaching of each, this portion and this portion, the preaching of each was based, the disciples and Miller, this is the each, was based upon the fulfillment of a different portion. There's only 2 portions. If the disciples are doing this portion, the Millerites have to do this portion. It was based upon the different portion of the same great prophetic period. So that means William Miller's message should have been, 1810 years are finished. Now we've come to the end of the 2200 days. You can't even see any 1810 here. So you know it's not their message. So you know that that interpretation to make this, I'll write it down as she says it, the great prophetic period. The great prophetic period. That's how the church would have you understand that passage, and it just doesn't work. But let's do it the way we understand it. Here's the 2520. And we already connected the 2520 with the 2300 days. And how do we connect that? What do we connect that with? 220, which means restore. Remember that?
Yeah.
677, 457, 2300 days. And here's the 2300 days, and we're going to cut it here. 490, 1810. So here's the cutoff. Here's the disciples, and here's Miller. The disciples and Miller. So now let's read the same statement.
It's like 412.
457.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I start getting down to waist level, you have to either squash, or if you're right there, you just use it.
So we can take a picture and don't want to.
Okay, so let's read this again. The preaching of the disciples in regard to time was based on the 70 weeks. There we have the 70 weeks, the disciples. The message given by Miller and his associates announced the termination of the 2300 days. Is that correct? The termination of 2300? That's all okay. Daniel 8:14, of which the 70 weeks forms a part. The preaching of each, the disciples and Miller, was based upon the fulfillment of a different portion of the same great prophetic period, the 2520. So the 2520 is the great prophetic period, and the disciples are preaching the 490 bit of it, and the Millerites are preaching the 2300 day bit of it. So when you see that, then you say, what is William Miller teaching? He's got a great prophetic period 7 times, and he's preaching the termination of the 2300 days, which is a portion of the great prophetic period, which is linked by the restoration theme of 220. And then there's this third component, which isn't discussed in this passage, but this is the coming of the kingdom.
So he's teaching the 2300 days, 2520, with the second witness being 2300 days.
It's exactly what he's doing. 2300 days and the 2520 are 2 witnesses to take you to this point. So, when you go to the Great Controversy statement, you can see that the grammar is not that straightforward.
Daddy, come on.
It takes a bit of effort to get used to it. And it's far easier to tackle it the way we tackled it originally, with those much simpler passages.
Hey, Parminder, can you do that little bit once more for Sandy? Because she just when she was going to get it, then the voice just descended on her.
So, we read the first one, we'll read this one again. The preaching of the disciples in regard to time was based upon the 70 weeks of Daniel 9. The message given by Miller and Associates announced the termination of the 2300 days. There's the 2300 days, here's Miller, that's okay. Of which the 70 weeks was a part, that's correct as well. Then it says the preaching of each, the disciples and the Millerites, was based upon the fulfillment of a different portion of the same great prophetic period. So if this is the great prophetic period, then you have to find that William Miller is preaching 1810. Because he'd be preaching this portion, and the disciples are preaching this portion. You can find this clearly. The disciples are preaching this, but the Millerites are not preaching 1810. They're preaching these 3. 677, 457, 508. So let's reread this again. The preaching of each, the disciples and the Millerites, was based upon the fulfillment of a different portion of the same great prophetic period. Here's the great prophetic period, the 2520. Is William Miller preaching that? It certainly is. It's the 7 times. And you can see the connection between them. 677 to 457 is 220. Then you get 490, and it's companion at 1810. But all of that is a 2300-day prophecy. So this is what's happening. The disciples are preaching this part or this portion of this great prophetic period, and Miller is preaching this portion of this great prophetic period. So they're both starting here. The disciples and the Millerites are starting at the same point, and the disciples are saying, we've come to this bit, and the Millerites are saying, we've come to this bit. And they're both components of the 2520, or the great prophetic period. So that's how you read the Great Controversy Statement. And there's only one more argument that people have. Well, there's 2 arguments. 2.5 arguments. One of them is that James White changes his mind.
Yeah.
So why does he change his mind? And we can answer that one really easily. We know why he changes his mind. And then the other question is, why doesn't Ellen White complain? And we can hint at why she didn't complain. Can't prove why she didn't complain. We can suggest. And she gives some level of acknowledgement or agreement about James White's disagreement in a kind of a sideways view. So that's 2.5. They're the only reason there are. And one more reason is if you go to Leviticus 26, they're going to start attacking the grammar because people like grammar, and so do we. We can go and do the grammar as well, and we can show that the argument that they have is a valid argument. But I don't know why we'd even want to go to all of that route when we've already got all the answers. We've dealt with the Great Controversy Statement, all the other ones. They're all explainable and watertight.
Unfortunately, a lot of the as in people in the church today, don't regard Ellen White as a prophet. And that, in one, you can't help that if they don't accept what she said. Like, for example, when we said that she doesn't contradict herself, well, they probably think she does, and therefore it doesn't count. So, but if you encounter people in that vein, you're not really going to convince them of anything anyway.
So, one of our big tests, if not the test, the great test, is you've got to accept Ellen White.
Yeah.
And if people say, prove through the Bible, just hit them with the forehead. Say, Ellen White or die.
Yeah.
It's that simple. If you don't accept Ellen White, we don't want to talk.
But James White accepted until 1850, isn't it? As you said the other day.
We're up to 1856 even.
Or 1856.
I mean, I'm saying that, amongst friends. I mean, in reality, you work with people, but you can't avoid that Ellen White is a test. And people are not going to accept the end-time message. They've got no chance if they're not going to accept Ellen White. And you can prove Ellen White is a real prophet through a really nice study called the presentation called Time Prophets.
When
It's
when
available on the
you
internet.
become a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, baptismal vow says you accept her as a prophet.
Yes, but they do it in such a watered version
It doesn't
that
count.
you can.
So
you
if
can
they're
cite-
saying they don't accept Ellen White, say, well, why are you in a vow?
Yeah, it's a big problematic issue. So
Member of the club.
let's address James White. I can't address Ellen White, but I can address James White.
Yeah.
I think the Seventh-day Adventist
Tell him to
Church.
join another.
Well, the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
I'll let you say that. So
Off you go.
say that.
Off you go.
Yeah.
Catholics are no.
Actually, I think Brother Patrick said they've already joined another church.
Yeah, that's it.
That's right.
That wasn't me. I didn't say that. He's got it.
I think Brother
That's
Patrick might
probably
be
all
right.
He said that they joined another church.
Yeah.
Who joined
The
another?
daily.
Who joined?
Who joined another church?
The
The Seventh-day
SDA
Adventists.
organisation, they've
Oh.
created another church.
I thought that's what you said. You taught us that.
No.
A new organisation.
Was your fault, Patrick?
And
I
White said
tweeted
it.
it.
And
Ellen White
White
said
said
it.
it.
Yeah, he was just quoting Ellen White. Ellen
Of
White
course,
said it. Of
that's
course.
right. Yeah, and that's true.
Books of a New Order.
Yeah. In fact, James White said it really early on. Because if you don't accept that this was a fulfilment of prophecy, you're entered into a new organisation. He said that really early on.
Yeah.
In what it says, we can't leave the principles of truth that were given us in the beginning and enter into the process of reorganization.
Yes, there you go.
That's what she says.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I've done it so many times.
And that's page what?
Is that one as number 204?
Yeah.
The old walls and sheets of clothing.
Okay,
This is James White, yeah?
this is James White.
Why he changed his mind.
742.
AD or BC?
BC.
It's at this end. So I'll give you the clue how you're going to know why James White's changed his mind. Everybody's an actor.
Yeah.
So you only have to ask yourself the question, what set of clothes are you going to wear from the wardrobe? Okay? So that's why James White does what he does. Okay? So well, let's move on. We're in 742 BC. Who's reigning? Ahaz. And there's a prophecy. Sorry? Yeah, by the time we get to the end. Yeah, I gave you the answer, but now we'll explain the answer. So here's 723, and here's 677. And this is 65 years. Where do we get this from?
Isaiah 27, 28, 28. Oh,
Isaiah
Isaiah
7.
7.
Which verse is it? 8, 9?
9/11.
One in every group.
Yeah, Isaiah verse 8. 7 verse 8. So here's 65. We're not going to go through all the history, because we've already done that in some detail. And this is 723. This is Hosea. You can calculate Hosea 723 with chronology. You can calculate 677, which is Manasseh, by prophecy, 65 years. You can calculate Ahaz 742 through Usher. Let's split the 65 years up. This is 46 years, and this is 19 years. That's just straight maths. We've done all of this already. So we're going to come all the way here, 2520, come all the way here, 2520. And this is the year 1798, this is the year 1844, and this is 46 years. Yeah, are we there? And we can divide this exactly in half, because this is 7 times, and this is 3.5 times, and 3.5 times. Yeah?
Yeah.
By the way, people tell you that the 2520 is not on these charts. Show them this. Show them this.
Cross.
We've got the structure there of the 2520. Here's the 2520, goes all the way through here. Yeah? And right in the middle of it is you've got the cross here. So let's put the cross in the middle. We already read just now, we didn't read the verses, in Daniel chapter 9. So Daniel chapter 9 is dealing with the third decree of Artaxerxes, which is given in the year 457 BC. We're familiar with all this now? And you have a prophecy of 70 weeks, which is 7, 62, and 1, which is 70 weeks, which is 490 years. When you do all the maths of that, this here is 483 years, and this is 7 years. And if you add them together, you get 490. And this history here, of these 7 last years, is 27, 31, and 34. And that's the cross in the middle. We're okay with that? And how?
Sorry, excuse me, where's the 49 years? Is that there? 49 from
The 7.
It's 490.
490.
The first 49
Yeah.
when Nehemiah was rebuilding. Is that there?
7 weeks.
Oh, is that 7 weeks? Okay.
Seven.
Yeah.
So how long is this? This is 7 years. And a year you can express as times, so you've got 7 times.
Yeah.
And when does Christ get crucified?
In the middle.
In the middle of the week, in the midst of the week. So 3.5 years and 3.5 years. 27, 31 and 34. And here's the cross. So even on the chart here it's predicted, or depicted should I say, that you have Christ in the middle of the cross, of the 25-20, with these 3.5 times, which is 7 times, which is exactly the same as you have here, 3.5 time period. So all of this story here, if we were to read Daniel chapter 9, this is all to do with establishing the covenant. If they forsake their sins, except the anointed one, the covenant will be established with their people. But remember, this was the whole story with Ahaz. If you believe your household, I will establish my covenant with you. And he rejected that truth, and he's going to now be punished. And so this whole story of punishment is just an enactment of the 70th week. You see this pattern or repeating pattern over and over again in many, many different ways. So,
Just a question.
yeah.
In 677, 1844 in the middle.
No, because this story here, what are these 3.5 times here? 1260, and 1260 is 1260 years of, what's happening in 1260 years?
Or pagan persecution.
Papal
and papal persecution.
persecution. So this theme is of persecution or scattering, but this theme is gathering. It's only when you understand the themes that you see that it's only going to be shown here that these 3.5 times are working, because this is the year 538, and you don't get that same construction or that same pattern or same thought with this one here, because this is teaching you a different truth. How many 25-20s are there?
One.
It's only one. Remember, it's only one. It's teaching you 2 different things. So this one is going to teach you one thing, and this is teaching you another thing. We don't have to find the same thing, because otherwise it would be sort of redundant. It's teaching you 2 separate thoughts with one prophecy. Let's get rid of all of that.
31 AD is that date.
31 AD is right down here, somewhere.
So it's not in the middle.
No, it's not in the middle, but it's a type. This is typology. Remember, if this is the great controversy, this is the story of Noah, and this is the story of Christ. Aren't they the same story? I could zoom this up and put it underneath here. I could shrink this down and put it down here. It doesn't matter how big these are. It means all that we're looking for is a typology. So once you have typology, you've got here, this little story is a pattern or a type of all of this big story, or this big story is a pattern or a type of this story.
So the fractal.
Sorry, I don't
I don't know.
get
Maybe.
it. I don't get it. Because you just said there's 3.5 times on either side of Christ, but maybe God didn't make it that way.
Because what you're doing is you're putting Christ, and you want to use this chronology here to do that. So let me ask you the question then. Before Christ, way back down here, you've got 3 decrees here, and you've got 3 decrees here. So if you I shouldn't put it here, it's not 677, it's down here. Yeah, you start getting problems if you're going to try and do everything to try mirroring it up and trying to get it all to square up. That's not what we're trying to teach. What we're teaching is that when we look at prophecy, I'll give you one example. We're at the time of the end, 1798, and here's 1844. Time of the end. What does time of the end mean? It means two things. It means a point, 1798, and it also means a period all the way through.
Yeah.
And when does that period end? Daniel 12:1. So here you are at Daniel 12:1, because it says at that time, and the time is there. So this is time of the end as well. Okay? But here's 1989. And if you accept it, what is 1989?
Time of the end in power.
So this is the time of the end. So now this, none of this is working, because now you've got time of the end. And how can you have a time of the end here and a time of the end here? And it all starts going awry if you're going to start doing that, because we're saying that the time of the end at one level is all of this, but prophetically we're going to take that out, and we're saying this is a type, or this is a type of this, and we're going to get that and drop it down here. But chronologically, this has been going like this all the way through. So it's a similar kind of problem that you're faced with here, because all I've got here is I've got one prophecy that lasts this long, and then I've got another one which is tucked in here, and this is the same story as this big one. The fact that it's in here, it doesn't matter, because I could have got this one. If it looked like that, would you have been happy? If it was, this is the pattern of this, would you have been happy then?
I'd be a little bit happy.
I thought you'd have to have it right in the middle.
No, it's a tough one. So you just, the time of the end, you're actually...
Oh, so that's made you happy?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine then. This story here, you get a pair of scissors and you just cut this out and bring it out on its own. So you take that out and you carry on with this big story, and you're saying this story here is the same story.
It's the same as what Patrick did when he went sideways. In
Yes.
1844
Yes.
to 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah, from
Because what we're doing, if we get a history here, I think I've done it a few times. You get this history, and this is the history of Noah, Moses, the 3 Persian kings, Christ, Millerite history. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got 5 histories, and we could put Noah in here. These are all sequential, but what we're doing is we're cutting all the history out that's in between them.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the fact that even if one of them was tucked in here, it wouldn't make a difference. Worse than that, without going into the details of it, if you do the line of Christ, baptism, first temple cleansing, and then the cross, that's 3.5 years. What do we mark this as? 9/11? And Sunday law?
Yeah.
Yeah? You can show that in this history, if I take this out, you can have 1, 2, 3, at least 4 9/11s. And all of them are going to have to do 1, 2, 3. So you've got 4 9/11s in that history. So in this history that goes all the way here, you can do a little 9/11, sorry, a little story here, and this is contained in that one, and that's contained in that one. So you can do the same thing at a time over and over again.
Would it be also true to say then that in that period you've got separate periods of the 3 steps?
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
But you have to go and discover them.
Yes.
But we don't normally teach it at that kind of level, but there's a lot of truth typically in all of that. Okay, so that's all that done. So here we are, we're at 46 years. We've spoken about different kind of ways of interpreting scriptures. Repeat and enlarge. What does repeat and enlarge mean? You've got part A, part B, and they're exactly the same. Are we okay with that? Another way of doing Bible studies is if we had a Bible verse, it might be in 4 segments. So you could have A, B, C, D. Often when a Bible verse does that, or even a chapter, you'll see that it actually, when we have this repeat and enlarge, it's going to repeat and enlarge in this way. These two will match up, and these two will match up. And when you were at school and you did maths or art sometimes, you got a piece of paper and you folded it down the middle and you got a paintbrush and splodged some paint here. And then you get them to fold it in half, don't you?
Yeah.
And you open it up and you get a repeating pattern here.
Yeah.
Because you want to teach them about what? What do we call this? A line of symmetry. So you want to teach symmetry in maths and you do it through art. So you get lines of symmetry in the scriptures. You can do it in a whole book or in a chapter or in a verse. So there's this line of symmetry and it's called chiastic structures. Or chiasms.
Yeah.
And everybody who does Bible studies have heard of these things. You may not, but if you go on the internet, they're everywhere. They teach you all about them. So all it is mirroring. So it's just a mirror or reflection. That's what chiastic structure is. And what we're going to do is we're going to see that this whole 2520 is a chiastic structure as well. So I'm just going to put a dotted line here without giving, I'm not worried about particularly the date. We're going to get all this history and we're going to fold it over into this history. So everybody see what we're going to do?
Yeah.
Let's just tackle some issues here. Ahaz. The kingdom is divided into 2 sections. What's the name of the kingdom? It's called, in Daniel 8:9, the pleasant land, or the glorious land. It's the land that's the most glorious in all the earth, Palestine. So it's the glorious land, but the nation is split into 2 sections. What are the 2 sections? They're split north and south. And who's the good and who's the bad? The north were bad and the south were good. And what's going on in this warfare? In this land, it's civil war.
Yeah.
This warfare has been going on before Ahaz came on the scene. But what's happening in this story here is that there's a battle that's coming. And in this battle, who are the north with?
Syria.
With the Syrians. And it says that they're confederate. And who's coming against who? The north. I'll do it like an arrow like this. The north are coming against the south. And there's a battle. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 7 characteristics. The glorious land. The land's divided between the north and the south. That's 2.
Yeah. They're
bad and they're good. 3. The north are coming against the south. That's 4. There's a civil war. They're confederate. The north is confederate. And the battle is an important battle in this warfare. Is that 6? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 7 keys I've got there.
Yeah.
Okay? And we're going to get this and we're going to mirror it over. So we want to get all of these characteristics and we're going to mirror them all the way down here in this history.
And you just determine that as you're going through it?
No, it's very specific.
Okay.
So here's our mirror or line of reflection. We've got this 2520. See the 46 here? We've got the 46 mirrored over here.
Yes.
And what precedes the 46 in this history?
19.
So we're going to have to put 19 on this side.
Yeah.
So here's the 19 on this side. So here's the 46 and 19. And that equals how much? 65, because you put a 65 there.
Yeah.
So let's do the maths of this. You've got 1844 plus 19. 4 plus 9 is 13. 4, 5, 6. So you've got here the year 1863. So let's figure out what happened in 1863. So let's look at the characteristics of what happens in 1863. Oh, one other characteristic here. You've got a king.
Yeah.
So there's a king,
That's right.
and there's a prophet,
Yeah.
and the prophet tells the king to do what? Trust in me,
Mm.
and he says, I'm not going to do it. So there's a lack of trust, and they're not going to be established. And when we say they're not going to be established, you're going to be scattered.
Mm.
So there's a scattering. So we already had 7, it's 8, 9, 10, 11, that's 12. So if you can get 12 things that's mirroring, you know that's not a coincidence. And this is all the story of the 2520. So here we are, and which country are we in? 1798, 1844, William Miller,
America.
which is America. So if you go to Daniel chapter 11, verse 41, it defines the United States, the USA, equals the glorious land.
Yep.
So that was point 1.
Yep.
Point 1, and we've done that, okay. Okay. So if you go back to American history, in the year 1861 to the year 1865, there was something going on in the United States, and what was going on was that there was a civil war.
Between the North and the South.
So here's the Civil War. I'll do that as number 2. So here's number 2. You've got Civil War. And the Civil War, the country was divided, not east and west, but north and south. So you've got 3, you've got north and south. Now who were the good people and who were the bad in this story? The north were the good,
Yeah.
and the south were the bad. Because it becomes an issue of slavery that's being dealt with here.
Yeah.
So that's number 4. I put number 4 here like that, number 4. And in this story here, okay, so in this story here, we're in the year 1863. The year 1863 is the most important year in that war because there's a famous battle. And so that battle is the Battle of Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And the Battle of Gettysburg is in the year 1863. So there's this battle. That's number 5. In that battle at Gettysburg, if you see how the nature of the warfare happened, who came and attacked who? The South came and attacked the North. But in this story, the North was attacking the South. So that's number 6. So you've got the South coming to attack the North. Now in this story, you've got, we're at 6, we're at 7 here, you've got Confederate. And who's Confederate? It's the North here that's Confederate. And in this story, the Northern people, or the part of the country, are called the Unionists, and the Southern people are called the Confederates.
That's right.
It's even, they're called Confederate by name.
Yes.
So we've got exactly 7 parallels all the way in 1863. Now, that is not coincidence, and all of that is to do with the 2520.
Wow.
So you've got 7 links here, but it gets worse because now we're dealing here with this part. Back here in all of this history, we just read that Ellen White went into vision when they're producing the studies for this chart, and then she said there was a prophecy about this chart, and this is the vision, and she's got a big stamp and put a big rubber stamp on this and say this is truth, the truth. So has the prophet spoken
Yes.
about that chart? She's already spoken.
Yes.
So you've got a prophet that's being dealt with here. So here's number 8, the prophet. And in 1863, we have our first General Conference session. here we're going to form into a church. And we're going to form a church. I'm going to explain the reason why we form a church. But we're going to get a general conference president who is a leader. So 9, there's a leader that's created here. And a leader is the same as a king. And at this very same conference, this story here starts what? The 25-20.
Yeah.
And right here, they're going to have a meeting at a general conference session, and they're going to officially reject the 25-20.
Back then.
They reject the 25-20.
That's right, I remember.
So there's rejection of 25-20, and there's rejection of the 25-20. There's no trust here on all that's happened before. And once that rejection happens, you're going to see that, I'll put these together, that the scattering are not established. Here's 11, and you're going to see that our church begins to get scattered from here. Right from this period, they begin to get scattered.
They started on the wrong foot.
So we've got 11 characteristics that all match up in this chiastic structure with the beginning and the end, all happening in 1863. By the way, the main reason we form a church is because of this war. We've got a war in that country, and Seventh-day Adventists do not want to bear arms. And they tell the government, we don't fight, but the government says, who are you? And they say, we're some ad hoc Adventists who believe in the Bible, and they say, well, we don't care about that, we're going to draft your men. And the only way we're not going to draft your men is if you're a church and you have some kind of state recognition. So they're forced to become a church so that the men, our young men, don't have to be drafted into the army to bear arms. They end up taking medical or something. But that's one of the primary reasons why they form a church. And the other reason is so that there's no issue of embezzlement. So all this war is the catalyst or the driving force that you're going to get a church in 1863. And after this, you're going to be scattered. Just in the same way that this church here was scattered after they rejected this truth.
Isn't that where the reformers kicked in?
That's the dream. Dream of William Miller.
Later.
Reformed Church of SDA.
Not in
No,
43
I don't
or
think
something.
I don't think it's there.
That was the first World War.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Let me just check if I've got my notes.
That's really good.
So, if you go to early writings, page 82. Early writings, page 82. This scattering is now going to be prophesied. Early writings, page 82. This is not Ellen White's statement. Early writings, page 82. I don't know if you want to read it. This is a dream that William Miller has, and she's going to tuck his dream into her book. And this dream is about a casket that's on a table that William Miller is kind of the custodian of, and it's all full of jewels. And then these people come into the room where this casket is, start looking at it, and everything's okay to begin with, because he's sharing all this information with people about his casket. Then they become to try and start handling it, and then lots of people come in and end up breaking the box, and they start throwing all the jewels around, and it all gets all messed up. So if you're in early writings, page 82, paragraph 1, it begins, the people. Are we there? We've cut into the passage. It says, the people began to come in, at first few in number, but increasing to a crowd. When the spectators increased, everyone would begin to trouble the jewels, taking them out of the casket and doing what? Scattering them on the table. So let's count the scattering. There's the first one. I began to think that the owner would require the casket and jewels again at my hand, and if I suffered them to be scattered, it's number 2, I could never place them in their places in the casket again as before. Then I began to plead with the people not to handle them, nor to take them out of the casket. But the more I pleaded, the more they scattered, number 3. And now they seem to scatter them all over the room, number 4. I then saw that among the genuine jewels and coin they had scattered 5 an innumerable quantity of spurious jewels and counterfeit coins. I was highly incensed and reproved them. But the more I reproved them, the more they scattered the spurious jewels and false coins among the genuine. That's 6. Next paragraph. Then I began to use physical force to push them out, but more would enter and bring in rubbish until the true jewels, diamonds and coins were all excluded from sight. They also tore in pieces my casket and scattered it 7 among the rubbish. No man regarded my sorrow or my anger. I became discouraged and disheartened and sat down and wept. So you have 7 scatterings.
Yeah.
So you've got the word scatter how many times?
7.
7 times.
7 times.
So you've got a statement about scattering 7 times, and it's beginning here in 1863 after the church goes into darkness. Are we all okay with that?
Yeah.
One question. We're 1798, and this was the time of the end. And then Brother Patrick showed you that this was 1989, the time of the end. Do you remember how he did that? How did he take you from 1798 to 1989? Where did 1989 come from? How did you create it?
Daniel 11, King of the South.
40.
Yeah.
So you have the king of the south come against the king of the north.
And then down there you've got the King of the North coming back at the King of the South.
And how's that going to give you 1989?
Because
It's about Tony Reagan
when they formed an
and
alliance
Bush,
between Bush and Pakistan
Okay.
against USSR.
which is against that the atheistic power.
Are we all up to speed? So this is atheism here,
Yeah.
and this also is atheism here, and this is the papacy or Rome, and this also is Rome. Okay, so we've done that, and you said it's the Soviet Union. Is that what you said?
USSR.
USSR. And so that brings us to 1989, because you just go to Wikipedia or anywhere and you know that. In fact, it's in your notes towards the back of these 2 pictures of those magazine articles. So you know it's 1989, so he took you there by that route.
Yeah.
Yeah? So let's show you something.
Oh!
Oh, you find me.
Oh, don't rub it off. Oh, I wonder what he's something.
Now you do the scattering.
He's doing it rubber.
Okay.
Somebody
So-
Just have some space for them.
Correct?
Just get a good shot.
Wait a minute.
He's in his
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
Yeah.
All need to take
It's
that.
good to have that option nowadays.
The precious jewels is rock on.
That's right.
Oh, dear.
I missed the last
Can you
one.
put them back?
Like, it is amazing. It is. It's beyond.
Every time I do it, I forget.
I know. Like, you could never. It would never seem normal. Like, as in coincidence.
I realised how
It's
I could have done
I mean, that proves 25, 20 as well.
Yeah.
Put the lights on there.
Over and over again, this is one of the most important prophecies. It's got so much integrity to it, and people just say it's a false prophecy, and people just buy into it.
Oh, picture.
It's unbelievable how much proof there is about this.
Oh, and yet they just, and actually this has been really, really good because I think I could actually explain it now. I don't think I
King, prophet, lack of trust, not established, scattered.
Lack of trust. What's the next one?
Not established and scattered. They just don't trust, they don't listen. Okay, so we'll put a little box in here because we're going to do a little study here, digression. A symbol can have more than one meaning. Do you agree with that? Okay? So You don't know because you don't know what the story I'm going to bring up. Because he's a symbol.
It could be the symbol of the Millerites.
So Nebuchadnezzar is going to represent the Millerites.
Really? Really?
Yeah, because he got the symbol.
And he's got a grandson called Belshazzar. And he is us. So we've got two Babylonian kings who are now going to symbolize God's people. This is Daniel 4 and this is Daniel 5. So the question is, can you do that? And the answer is, of course you can do that. Because you can turn anything into a symbol, but you just got to make sure you can prove that it's a valid application. That's what you have to prove. This is all the story about 2520. So right here, here's the Millerites, and they're all accepting the 2520. They all know about it, but what are they going to end up doing at the end here? Here's James White, the leader, number 10. He rejects the 2520. Yeah? So they reject the 2520, and if they reject it, you're going to be punished.
Who does James White represent in the over there?
Sorry?
James White.
James White is the de facto leader. He doesn't become the General Conference president, but he's the de facto. He's the one who's driving this agenda. Yeah? Did that answer your question? Did that answer your question?
Where does he match in the title?
Which type? This one. I haven't got. I'm not doing that. That's not the point I'm making.
Okay.
But all I'm saying is, he can't reject the 2520 unless the whole church is going to go with him. So this is a representation that the church rejects the 2520. This is the church that's doing this.
Why would he be leading that?
Oh, I
So
see.
why would he?
Be leading.
Because they want to vote him to be General Conference president, but he retracts because he doesn't want people to think he's doing it for money. So he steps back, but everybody knows he's the leader. And he's the one who brings the subject up about the 2520 at the General Conference session.
They
This is
say
all-
no, so he goes along with it.
he says we need to get rid of this 2520, and everybody says, yep, we all agree, we all think it's rubbish, and they all vote for it.
But why would he say that?
We don't know, because it doesn't. There's no preamble to this. It's just there it is, out of the blue, as far as I know.
Doesn't Jeff talk about the fact that him getting tired and being influenced by the wrong men, drawing a correlation between him and Moses? Moses, I think.
We could present it to maybe Ahaz, but not Moses.
I thought it was Moses actually in the time when he actually got, right at the very end, and then he didn't actually go through to the promised land at that point. Yeah, I know, but I thought he drew a correlation between.
I'm sure you can. Yeah, I mean, James White is ill and sick.
Yeah,
but
yes, and I think he was...
We can take correlation from that, but that's just further and further study.
Yes.
And if we went to all the details,
Okay.
we'd be...
Here for
So
another
so that's why
6 days.
this is just a surface understanding of what's going on. You need to go back and
Not so.
Yeah.
check 11 points, and we haven't even dealt with a number of other ones.
Yeah.
So here we are, that the church has rejected it, and they're going to be punished, because that's what happens when you reject this message here. You reject it, you're going to be punished. You reject it, you're going to be punished. So I want to say that the Millerites are being symbolised by Nebuchadnezzar, and we at the end of the world are going to be symbolised by Belshazzar. We can make that connection because we're the children of the Millerites, and he's the children of Nebuchadnezzar. And what they rejected, the 2520, and the 2520 is 7 times. So we're not going to go to Daniel 4 because we know it very well. Daniel 4, Nebuchadnezzar becomes really proud and haughty, and he says, I've built Babylon all by myself with my own strength, and God says, if you do that again, I'm going to punish you 7 times. So has he been punished?
Not yet.
No. Does he know about the 7 times?
Yeah.
So he knows about the 7 times. It's in his consciousness, and he knows what's going to happen if he repeats it. So did the Millerites know about the 7 times? They certainly did. And then he's going to exalt himself, and God's going to punish him there and then. He's going to receive a punishment, and he's going to become an animal for how long?
7 times.
For 7 times. So he's going to go into the wilderness for 7 times, he's going to be punished, scattered, he's going to lose his kingdom, and then he's going to get restored. So this is the theme of the scattering and the gathering. He's scattered and restored. So you see this theme here. If he was never restored, by the way, you'd never have Belshazzar on the scene. It would be someone else, something else would have happened. We wouldn't have been here if the Millerites hadn't been restored. So you're going to get this idea that they're going to be scattered. For how long are they going to get scattered? 7 times scattering. This is the Millerite. Then we're going to jump to the next chapter. This is Belshazzar. Belshazzar, he's got a feast. So at the feast, he's going to get so excited, he's going to say, we're going to get all the cups and the plates from our treasure house, and we're going to use the ones that are from the sanctuary. And he's going to do that because he wants to make a statement about which God is the better and stronger God. The God of the Jews or him, because he's God himself actually. So he wants to make this statement. And when he's got the plates out and filled them up and the cups and he was using them, then what do you get? You get the handwriting on the wall. So here's the handwriting on the wall.
Now that's a good story.
So this handwriting on the wall says, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. You all familiar with that? Because we read it to our children over and over again. So this is the pronouncement. Does he understand what this is talking about? No. And he's representing us. We don't know what we're talking about either. We can go to various Bible passages and we don't know what we're doing. Brother Patrick took you to one Bible verse, that story, when he spoke about Zachariah, Elizabeth's husband, and when he doesn't believe the angel, what happens to him? Can't speak, he hasn't got any message to give. So here's this person, Belshazzar, doesn't understand what's going on, he's ignorant. So he's got no message to give. So you see these parallel stories going on here. So here we are, the handwriting on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, and he doesn't know what's happening. So he's going to call Daniel in, and they're going to say, can you explain what's on the wall? Because no one else can explain it. First of all, he goes to all the wise men. He says, can you explain what's on the writing? And what do they all say? No. So the question is, why can't they understand what's on the wall? Why can't they understand what's on the wall? Why do you think?
Different language.
Different language.
They didn't have a God like that, did they?
They didn't have a...
God like that.
Okay, so most people think it's a different language. But it's not. It's the same language. It's exactly the same language that everybody reads. So those wise men can go up and say, we can read that. We know what it says, but we don't know what it means. So the problem that they've got is that it's not that they can't read English. This was English. They can read it, but they don't know what the English words mean. It's a conundrum, or a puzzle, or a parable, if you like. So they're going to call Daniel in, and Daniel is going to explain what that means. So Daniel's going to say what? He's going to say, you're dead, the kingdom's going to come to an end, and the Medes and Persians are going to divide it between themselves. Do you think that that's what those words mean? No, it doesn't. In the English, you probably have the same thing. There's a phrase called, it's a play on words. Do you have that same phrase here? A play on words?
Yes.
So you've got words, and what you're going to say those words mean isn't actually what they mean. So that's what Daniel does, it's a play on words. What's written there isn't actually what he says it means. It's something different. So for over 2,500 years, no one's known what that means. But it's been in all the Bibles, in all the commentaries. Everybody could go and read them and figure out what it was if they wanted to, but no one's been able to do it until the very end. God raised up Elijah, and Elijah has been given the light through the Holy Spirit. This is the Holy Spirit. It's a message that contains the Holy Spirit, and the Lord's given us this information of what this means. And it's really important for us to understand what it means. So here we have Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. Now, you've heard of Spanish, and you heard of Portuguese. And they're sister languages. if you're Spanish, you can go to Portugal and you can pretty much understand what they're saying. It's not far different. There's not much difference between the two. There's differences, but you can understand it. If you go to Hebrew and you go to this language, they're like that. Their roots come from the same source. Hebrew and this language here is Aramaic or Chaldean. Their roots are exactly from the same place. Their ancestry is the same. And they go down and they end up having different languages, but they're very, very similar. If you can speak Hebrew, you can speak Aramaic. This is in Aramaic, this thing. So, if you go to Mini Tickle Your Fasting, this is the easiest one to do with. In Aramaic, they call it a tickle or a tekel, and in the Hebrew, they call it a shekel. And a shekel is a coin. Now, unlike us today, when we have coins, we don't weigh our coins to give it its value. It's just got a print on them, like a stamp, like 50 cents or $1 or whatever coins you have. And so the weight and the size of them don't have any relevance to it. But in those days, they did. So if you have a coin, you're going to understand the weight of it, because the weight will determine its value. Normally they'd use precious metals. That's how they all started. So you have a gold coin of a certain weight, and it would have a certain value. But later on, it became what you call fiat currency, where the metal and the weight of it have no bearing to the value. It's done on a promissory note. But originally, it wasn't done that way. So you've got coins which are to do with weight. So it's to do with money and weight. And a tekel is 1 shekel. And the mini is 50 shekels. Now, you don't have to take my word for this. I can show you it on my computer. Or you can even go on the internet now and you can prove it for yourself. You can go into a Bible which has got all the Strong's numbers on it. Check what the definition of all these words mean, and you'll see it's there. It's easy to see. It's 50 shekels. And so you've got another 50 shekels here because there's 2 of them. And if you look at you fasting, it's half a mini. So what would half a mini be? 25. So if you add them all together, you've got 50, 100, 101, and 25 is 126 shekels. So you've got 126 shekels. That's their punishment. So that's what those wise men said. It looks like 126 shekels, but what is that supposed to mean? So they have no idea what it means. So he's going to say, I'll tell you what it means. It means you're going to be killed, your kingdom's going to come to an end, it's going to be divided between the Medes and the Persians. And that's not what it means, obviously, because it means 126 pieces of money. But it's a play on words. Because it really does mean that. You can go into here and you can figure out why he says that. Why he's going to come up with that conclusion. So we're going to look at what 126 shekels mean. But the other point that we want to do is when Daniel's having this conversation with him, before he explains what it means, he makes a pronouncement upon Belshazzar. And he says, Belshazzar, you knew different. You knew better than what you did, than what you're doing. And how does he know better? Who's his granddad? And when Nebuchadnezzar becomes self-exalted and proud, what happens to Nebuchadnezzar? He gets punished and brought down for 7 years. And you think Belshazzar doesn't know that? He does. In fact, Daniel reminds him, he says, you knew what happened to your father, your grandfather, when he became proud. So, if you go through the story of Nebuchadnezzar, he says, I'm proud. And what does God do when he says he's proud? He says, I'm going to warn you. Where does warning come in the everlasting gospel? First step.
First step, yeah.
A warning message. So he gets the warning message, and then he's going to be told what the punishment is, which is the 25-20, that's number 2. And then when he actually does it, it's going to hit, and there's a judgment. So here's number 3. He receives judgment, and he's going to be scattered for 25-20 years. Yeah?
Or days.
Days, sorry. So this is the story of Nebuchadnezzar. Now he's going to talk to Belshazzar, and he's going to say, all of this story about Nebuchadnezzar was your warning message. So let me do that up here. Here you have 1, 2, 3. This is Millerite history. This is Nebuchadnezzar. He's going to collapse all of this into one. And he's going to project this here, and now you've got Belshazzar. And he says, Belshazzar, all of this history here, 1, 2, 3, is your warning. Where have you seen that pattern before? Revelation 14, verses 6 to 7. 1, 2, 3 steps is your warning. So you've got your warning, which is the first angel's message. And the first angel's message contains what? All the components of all three. So here you have Belshazzar's warning is the history of the Millerites, which contains all of those 3 steps. Then he gets the handwriting on the wall. Number 2, Mene, Mene, Tekel Upharsin. And then he gets number 3, which is death. They die. What happened to the Millerites? They are restored. These people don't. So at the end of the world, you know we're not going to get restored. So this is the relationship between Daniel 4 and Daniel 5, between the warning that Nebuchadnezzar gets and the one that Belshazzar gets. So here's his warning that he's going to get in the second step. In Millerite history, 1840, April 44, in 42 you've got the chart, the 1843 chart, remember that? And one of the things that's on the 1843 chart is the 2520, and when we bring this into our history, we've got 9/11, then we've got 2005, remember, and we've got both charts, and they're rejecting the 2520, remember? So if you track this through, this would be the first, and this would be the second, and you can show that this is the third, because you can make this, you can show that this is midnight cry, or the sunny or depending on the point you want to make. So the only point I want to pick up here is that the second waymark is connected to the 2520. So this Mene, Mene, Tekel Upharsin is connected to 2520, but it's only 126. Now, in your currency, you have $1 equals 100 cents. In the Jewish coinage or economy, you've got 1 shekel equals 20, what they would call gira. So you've got 1 shekel equals 20 gira. So if you've got 126 shekels, here's 126 shekels, how many gira is that? You would have to do 126 times 20. So if you do 126 times 20, it'd be 1,260 times 2, which is 3.5 times 2, which is 7 times, which is 2520. So this punishment that Belshazzar's going to get right here, he's going to get a punishment of 2520. So here, when these people are rejecting this message, it says they're going to be scattered for 7 times, and 7 times is the 2520. We've just shown you here 7 times. So this is the Mene, Mene, Tekel Upharsin. This is this message that's going to now come and hit Adventism at the end of the world. But there's one more point that we want to bring up, and that's this 126. Why was it in shekels? So let's look at that. It's 7 times, and I'm saying the 7 times is 126. So let's get 1863, and add 126 to that. 3 plus 6 is 9, 6 plus 2 is 8, 8 plus 1 is 9, 1. So it's taken you to 1989, because 1989 is when the scattering stops. There's no more scattering, because now the Lord's going to do what? Now he's going to gather. He's going to gather from 1989 to the Sunday law. So this is the gathering that's going on. So this rejection of the 2520 takes you all the way through here, right to the end here. In this gathering period, we've gone full circle now, because back into Ahaz, what have you got? A threefold union that's going to come and destroy God's people. And here you've got this threefold union that's going to come and destroy God's people. And did he listen? No. Are we going to listen? No. But still, the Lord's going to save a remnant out of all of this carnage that's going to happen. So, in this story that we read from Early Writings in William Miller's Dream, I didn't read on past that, but if you read on past that, there's another 3 scatterings that are produced. 1 and the 2 and the 3. Because even though there's going to be a gathering, from 1989, there's going to be this scattering that comes through God's church to bring it to ultimate destruction. Because God's church are going to be finally scattered in Babylon. Now there's a lot more that we could still say about the 2520.
Maybe decide to add the shekels to 1863.
Who did that? Was that Jim?
I don't even know who did that.
Because
Is
that's
that
a
amazing?
weird thing to do.
Not
Just
really.
say I've got 126 shekels in the church in 1863. What do you just sort of take a lot of numbers from everywhere and add them to 63 and see what you get?
And that's where they rejected the 7 times.
Actually, I think
In 1863, yeah.
Your question is, how do we figure it out?
yeah.
And I'm saying, someone in his room
Holy Spirit.
liked all these numbers, and the Lord was directing him. She, I don't know if it's he or she, came up with this idea, shared it with the brethren, and the brethren said, this is light. And then someone started adding up information. Because I don't think the person who found that probably was the same person who understood or walked with you his dream. That was a different person who now has got one piece of information, adds another piece, and then someone adds another piece.
Yeah.
So it's always people adding more and more information together to develop this story. So this is kind of like a brief overview. So I hope you can go back from here and say, whatever anybody says, I know the 2520 is right. And not only it's right, but it's the everlasting gospel, and we need to stand on it.
Yes. Definitely. That's
Very
awesome.
good.
No.
Can you just recap from that?
You can. I was going to say that maybe you can have a go.
Yeah, they've got to summarise it.
Well, you just said it was a brief.
Yes, everything to do. So, all we want to say is that the end of the scattering takes you to 1989, which brings you full circle back to 1798 to 1989, and you get this truth established 20 years ago. 20 years ago, this was formalised. 20 years ago, it was formalised, and now I don't know how many years, a couple of years it's been. We've understood all of this light, and it confirms what we knew right from the beginning 20 years ago.
It's in harmony.
It's in total harmony, and this truth happens over and over again. We've been preaching or teaching something, and then we realise we've come full circle and we're saying the same thing through a totally different route. So just to recap, because my sister wasn't here, we went through Nebuchadnezzar's story and Belshazzar's. I'm saying he represents the Millerites and he represents us at the end of the world. This is Daniel 4, Daniel 5. Nebuchadnezzar is going to be proud and he's going to be punished with his 7 times prophecy, but he's going to be restored. And so his story is the warning message for us at the end of the world. At the end of the world, we are told by the prophet, you should have known better. And because you didn't look back to your forefathers' history, the Millerite history, now you're in real trouble. Because when this punishment comes to you and you don't know what it is, there's no excuse because you're required to know. Because these charts have been available for a long time and you've got all the writings. So you can get, I'm not sure how much you missed, but you have Mini Tilka Fasid. There it is. Mini Tilka Fasid. 50, 50, 1 and 25, which comes to 126 shekels. And like we have $1 equals 100 cents. They had 1 shekel equals 20 gira.
Or the temple shekel.
And if you multiply 126 shekels and find out how many gira is, it's 126 times 20, which is 1260 times 2, which is 3.5 times 2, which is 7 times. So you know that the punishment that's going to come to God's people is the punishment of the 7 times. And this is a symbol of God's people at the end of the world. And they don't even know about the 2520 because they're rejecting it, remember? This is the rejection, and the rejection is because prophetically we don't even know what it's about. But this 2520 is given symbolically as the number 126. We've already identified once you reject the 2520 in 1863, you're going to be scattered. And it says you're scattered for 7 times. So this 7 times scattering is the mini tiku yufasin. The mini tiku yufasin is 126 shekels. And if you go from 1863 and add 126 to it, it takes you to the year 1989. And so that 1989, which is the time of the end, is a time period where God is going to begin to gather his people, just as he began to gather his people here. So this is the proof that this is the gathering, as this is the gathering here.
Amen.
But in this story of this gathering, which is going to happen, in William Miller's dream, there aren't 7 of these gatherings, there's another 3. The story runs like this. There's a break in the story, and it's got 7, and it's got 3. There's a divide here. This is 7 times, and then there's 3 more scatterings. And this is the everlasting gospel. 1, 2, 3 steps to final scattering. So that was just a really quick review or recap of the last bit that we missed about
Just
the 2520.
That's one of Parminder's pet talks.
So we're going to go back and do the expanded version?
Yeah.
For you.
Do that on YouTube or something?
What I want to say is that no one's expecting you to believe everything. No one's certainly expecting you to remember 90% of what is this. But I want you to go away knowing that as you went through that experience, you could see that it was truth, even though you might not be able to replicate it yet, but there were key points that you could just latch onto. And the ones that I want you to latch onto is the following, that these are the vision. Those charts, they're the truth. It's a singular vision. It's the Hazon vision or the 2520. And if you can just remember that, whatever people bombard you with, you can't get moved or shaken off that. But the rest of it, you can see that all of this lines up. You may not be able to remember it. You may not be able to remember how you get to 1989, but you can see you get to 1989. And 1989 is the time of the end. So we've got 2 witnesses, the time of the end.
Amen.
You take it from this route and you take it from this other construction route, Daniel 11 verse 40, you come to the same point. 2520 is teaching you a lot. And remember the beginning of 2520, the threefold union here. This threefold union is going to come and destroy God's people, and they're already on the scene. Father Patrick's already shown you the threefold union already here. Went to Psalms 48? Not yet. Okay, so we've still got a bit more to go on that. But the threefold union is already here. You can see them in the world. The papacy is on the rise. The United Nations are aiding America and the coalition of the willing to come and deal with radical Islam. So all of this history is the 2520. You need to know it. If you don't, you're in trouble. Because it's the grand prophetic period. It's the vision. It's what this church is founded upon. It's the third angel's message. There's many, many symbols. But if you were to say to somebody, we learned about the third angel's message this weekend, they say, oh, that was good. And you say, 2520. They'll think you're mad. Nobody, who would ever accept that? Nobody would. When you piece it together, you know, if you get someone who's hardcore anti-2520 and you show them what we did, they'd say, you know what, I believe in the Bible, I don't believe what you're teaching. And we're just reading what Ellen White's quotes are. And I'd say, do you believe in Ellen White? She goes, I believe in Ellen White, but I don't believe what you're saying. It's so problematic, this issue, when you become blind to your condition. It's a real scary business when you start arguing with the Elijah message. The Bible says, having eyes, they do not see, and having ears, they do not hear. And it says, because their hearts are waxed and gross. And that, if you look what that terminology means, it means that they've become calloused. Their hearts have become hardened. And you don't have a love for the truth. Because that's where love resides. And you know what you need to do to your heart? You need to cut a piece of it away. Paul calls it circumcision of the heart. And you can show all of that in this message. All of that is in this message as well. The circumcision of the heart. The cutting away of the callous. There's so much truth in this. It's just. How can you not get excited studying this?
Yeah.
How can you not get excited? Go anywhere, even at a conservative camp meeting, and I've gone for 3 hours now, mostly non-stop, and nobody's shuffling around or getting jittery. You can't go anywhere and sit. Even at a hardcore conservative meeting, you get bored after a while. We've been going for 3 hours non-stop, and I wanted to finish because I know we're tired. But we could easily carry on, and we probably will just mulling around for another couple of hours because this is exciting. For me it is, and I've done this numerous times, and I still get excited every time I do it. Because it reinforces that this is belief, this is true. I look around and I see all these people and I think, that's reality. And I forget, and I think, oh, this is just a Bible study. And then I come and do it and I say, this is real life. And that's about all to come to an end. Because the threefold union's already here, we don't realise it. And you can't. The only way you're going to look outside in the world and see it for what it is if you put your energies and your efforts into studying this way. And it's exciting, it really is. When you come together and you speak about the Word of God, and you go to places that you couldn't ever go to. Let's go to prayer. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for your goodness and your mercy towards us. Father, may we realise, especially those of us in this room who are familiar with these truths, who can teach these truths, who know all the answers to these truths, that this is holy ground. And this is not a theatrical act. This is not an exhibition of how much knowledge or how much information we know. Lord, help us to remember as we are dealing with these truths that this is the gospel message that saves us. And may each of us approach it with reverence. In fact, the more times we approach this, the better off we are. Help us never to lose the sanctity and the reverence that we should have as we discuss these precious truths. Father, for those of us who are new to these truths, I know that it's hard and complicated and people may be lost of where to begin and how to begin. But we know that you created us with infinite retention of all of these facts. Our problem is, Father, that we cannot recall them. And even this has been proved to be a blessing to us. Because as we don't understand these things, we must rely upon the Holy Spirit to show us. So Father, when you bring us into a straight place to give a reason for our faith, we can hold on to the promise that if we have studied, that the Holy Spirit will bring to our remembrance what we have studied, even though 5 minutes before our minds are blank. Help us, Lord, to be fit vessels to receive that help from the Comforter. Help us to trust in him so that we would not want to wound or make him leave us. Help each of us, Father, to put sin out of our lives so that we might reflect your character and that we might be your workers here on earth. Lord, we ask all these things and we ask much more than we can even speak about in a short prayer such as this. All these things we do ask in the name of Jesus.